Good afternoon, everyone. We will call to order this meeting of the Board of Trustees for Tuesday, August 27th. And would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, I will, Madam President. Trustee Calvert. Trustee Caudill. President Simon Holland. Trustee Kelly. Trustee Minetto. Vice President Raymond. Clerk Taylor, I am here. And hey, we have a new student here. Good to see you, Nathan. And we are, Nathan Noble's here, and then Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, Madam Dr. Clerk. Our next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to invite Chris Riley from Tesla to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right.
Just start.
Ready?
No, it's okay.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was kind of unfair, wasn't it? You haven't seen the routine before. Well done, sir. All right, next item is action to adopt the agenda, and I would call for public comment. Does anyone have any comment on adopting the agenda? No public comment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Calvert. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have our consent agenda, and we can, I would ask at any time, if there are any items for the consent agenda to be taken out of consent at this point in time. Okay, no items to be taken out of consent. We do have public comment. JJ?
John Eppolito.
Mr. Eppolito, you were here early.
Yes.
How's your
The
wrist?
heat, sort of. The wrist is fine, thank you.
Okay.
John Eppolito with Protect Nevada Children. I had a question on 2.07. $6.5 million for information technology networking equipment for 1 year. I have no idea why it's so much, but what my question really is and I've brought this to this board before. I'm hoping that the new schools are putting in wired internet and not wireless. A lot of schools that had the wireless internet are switching over to wired, and you guys are building all these new schools. So are you putting in wired internet or wireless? And it's for the health concerns of the kids. And the 5G is especially problematic.
Thank you for your comments. I'll try to see if we can have someone answer that for you.
Thank you.
Dr. McNeil, do we have anyone here who can answer that?
I see our chief IT officer in the back as well as
His sidekick.
his sidekick. There we go.
Mr. Sidford? So two questions. One is not really on this agenda item, but we'll allow it anyway. Okay. So the question is, why does our 2.07 approval of the second renewal for request bid cost $6.5 million?
Oh, that's me. Okay. Mike Petrie, IT Coordinator, Office of Information Technology. In the past, we've received approximately $1 million per year to refresh our infrastructure equipment. That is wireless access points, switches, routers, phones, things like that within the schools. Currently, we have approximately $36 million worth of equipment in our 110 sites throughout the district. And a 36-year refresh cycle was not acceptable. It's not going to keep us in an acceptable level of technology. This year there has been an increase in the allocation from the capital improvement project system, whatever that is, to take us to approximately $4.5 million each year for this project. So that's 4.5 of that. Then we're going to have 2 new schools going in, Bohatch and Hers. That's another $750,000 worth of that. And then there's some other annual maintenance items and things like that that go along, as well as an allocation for any other general funded projects that may come up through the year, through the course of the year.
Okay,
Does that
thank
explain?
you. And
Sure.
and does this include devices or only backbone.
This is only backbone. This is only the infrastructure within the schools.
Okay. And then if you could respond to the question about wireless versus wired.
Thank you. For the record, Robert Sidford, Chief Information and Innovation Officer. Appreciate the question. Basically, the infrastructure that's going in supports wired and wireless internet, and that is because obviously we have a large number of devices that plug into the wall, plug into all the infrastructure that Mr. Petrie just talked about, and then also these are one-to-one schools. So those, or the one-to-one schools are what we're supporting in terms of the new schools, and so we have this year five schools that are one-to-one schools that require wireless to operate because these devices are obviously with the students to be part of their education throughout the day. The other thing is that, of course, the devices that we have across the district, more and more and more, and I've presented to the board in the past about the number of portable devices that we have compared to the purchasing of, say, lab devices or desktop devices is substantially greater. And so to support those devices requires wireless internet.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Mr. Petrie. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Motion by Dr. Taylor, second by Vice President Raymond. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You will note that we have moved our general public comment period to after our consent agenda items so that, again, we were moving our time of our meeting to enable more people to be here to be able to make public comment, so we moved the public comment just a little bit so that we could handle those business items first. We'll open it up to general public comment now. JJ?
John Eppolito.
Welcome back, Mr. Eppolito. At least you don't have flip-flops on. I mean, shorts are okay, but...
It's too hot down here. You guys turn the heat up.
I know.
John Eppolito with Protect Nevada Children. I had some concerns about this response from the school district. 2.5 years ago, we asked a simple question. We thought it was a simple question. Who can Infinite Campus share our children's data with? And the response was that Infinite Campus is prohibited from sharing data with third-party vendors. That's what your chief of staff wrote 2.5 years ago. This morning, I got an email from someone in IT, I guess, and what that person said was, oh, Infinite Campus doesn't share data. What we do is extract the data and transfer it to them. So, you know, I think you guys think that this is a joke. This is not a joke. This is data. We have 150 plus school officials. You guys have named as school officials. The school district is giving them data from Infinite Campus. They give whatever data you guys want to give them. My kids were involved in the data breach. So what brought all this up is how did this vendor even get my kids' data? Because my kids don't log in. And come to find out, Infinite Campus, you guys were having Infinite Campus give data to Pearson Education, and then the teachers were entering data on my kids at that same place. So we still don't have what we asked for. I came down here special today. They still didn't understand the question. I had to ask Alan 3 times in the meeting, why does Pearson just have that little bit of data? And I even told him in Las Vegas, teachers were entering data. Finally, the 3rd time, he said, oh yeah, teachers are entering the data after Pearson gets the account set up. It's ridiculous. We were really hoping that 2 of you board members would help these kids and protect them, and we're very disappointed. It's very frustrating. And you know what? This is 64,000 kids, and everybody's worried about themselves. All these people making $100,000+ a year, they're not going to do anything to protect these kids. It's up to you school board members to do it, and I'm very frustrated with you people, especially the ones we thought were going to be helpful. This week, well, actually, it's been within the last 2 weeks, 3 legislators, U.S. legislators, sent out 2 letters to ed tech vendors. Washington Post covered the story. The title of the article is Legislators Ask 50+ Firms to Explain How They Use the Vast Amounts of Data They Collect on Students. Another U.S. senator sent another I got the information right here. I really ran out of time. I didn't plan it out too good. Some more information for you guys to ignore.
Thank you, Mr. Ippolito. And we will have an agenda item on ed tech vendors. When is that scheduled, Dr. McNeil?
Dog and pony show like last time?
September 10th.
Thank you. Okay. Is there other public comment?
Sam Gettle.
Did we pronounce your last name correctly? All right. Welcome, Mr. Gettle.
I apologize if I'm a little crabby. There was yet another incident in front of Veterans Elementary about 3 o'clock this afternoon. A parent was blocking the alley, and when approached kindly to move, verbal assault started using filthy language, racial slurs, and threat of violence. I've been here before, so as a direct result of your collective refusal to mitigate the parking issues, you put the children, the parents, my workers, my tenants in danger. The source of the problem is you have no on-site parking. You have plenty of space. Your principal is a delight, and she's been pushing for that. But your staff hoards all the spaces. Can you imagine? Your employees, your custodians, and your teachers, who are supposed to be an example for the public, are putting all of us in danger. What gives?
Thank you, Mr. Gettle. And I know our interim superintendent is taking notes, and I noticed Deputy Chief was also paying close attention. We'll work on that. Ms. Batchelder?
That's all I have for
All
this
right.
item.
Thank you. We'll go on to items listed under number 4, and first is our presentation of the Board of Trustees regarding the district's partnership with Tesla, including focus on robotics programming in schools, and this is information discussion only, and this was our request of Mr. Riley to come and talk about some of the things that are happening with Tesla. Ms. Beiersdorf, Mr. Hartzog, Chris Riley, Dale Payne, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. President Simon Holland, Interim Superintendent Dr. McNeil, and members of the board, Deborah Beiersdorf, Chief Academic Officer. And very excited to bring these 3 guests in front of you today. I was actually thinking it was probably good that we did delay this presentation a little bit, because I think we have even better information about where we're at right now with our partnership with Tesla as the school year has started. So let me introduce to you Josh Hartzog, who is our new Director of Signature Academies and Career Technical Education. We have Chris Riley. Chris's title is Workforce Development and Education Lead for Tesla. And then finally, we have Mr. Dale Payne, who is the Robotics Program Coordinator, who works actually out of the CTE department very closely with Josh and his team, and also very closely with Chris and his team as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Talk on the first one? Oh, perfect. Madam President and members of the board, good afternoon. For the record, Chris Riley from Tesla. Thank you all so much for taking the time to hear a bit more about this partnership. And I just wanted to give a short background brief. This was part of the Gigafactory 1 project here in Northern Nevada, whereas part of Tesla's commitment to building Gigafactory here, we wanted to also have a commitment in education and investments. And so part of this was, over the course of 5 years, we would invest $37.5 million into K-12 education in the state, and in very close partnership with the Department of Education and through our education gift fund with the state. And just taking a step back on that, what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to think about how can we do this in the exact same way we invest in every project at Tesla. And so looking at this through the lens of our mission, and our focus in everything we do is accelerating that transition to sustainable energy. And whether it was building our products, building our roadmap, or developing programs in partnership with education, it became a really exciting opportunity. And so I'd say about 3-4 years ago, we really started down the path of researching what would be the most impactful ways we could work together and partner. And as we would visit with teachers and students and tour, what we would see is we would see these students who were competing in robotics and who were learning the exact same skill sets that we are looking for day to day at Gigafactory. And when we would go around Tesla and talk to different teams, different technical leaders, we'll say, what was that moment that made you want to become an engineer? And she would say, it was when I was in high school or when I was in middle school and I was competing in competitive robotics. And that became a leading indicator. And we started coming together and planning, and we started the investment. We'll talk a bit more about that over this past July of last year, and continued another round this year. But really thinking about how could we work together to have a robotics program at every school in Nevada, across elementary, middle, and high school. And these would be different programs at different levels and different needs, but how do we support these schools individually in the most impactful ways? And that was really the kind of background for how we've started. And we have some other investments really focusing around sustainability programming in education, but for today, I think we want to dive a little bit deeper on where we are in robotics growth here in Northern Nevada.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the time to share some good news with you tonight. My name is Josh Hartzog, for the record. I am the director of the Signature Academies and Career Technical Education Department. I'm going to take a brief moment to walk you through the Tesla investment, the broad categories of that investment, and how it pertains to our major initiatives rolling forward in the district. So the first way that the Tesla initiative, or investment rather, looks is in terms of innovative programs. So at this point, when we talk about robotics programs, we're mainly referring to after-school clubs and teams. And those clubs and teams are attached to, at the secondary level, they're primarily attached to, say, computer science programs or manufacturing programs or math programs. Most of our coaches and our advisors who work with robotics teams, they're computer science teachers or they're math teachers or general science STEM type teachers. And then at the elementary and middle school level, robotics programs look like, again, robotics teams and clubs tied to STEM or STEAM related clubs. So the pinnacle in terms of what a robotics program would look like when we talk about integrating robotics in a school would be the establishment of automation technologies course from career tech education perspective. So there's actually a course called Automation Technologies, and it's all about robotics. We are currently developing that course as a pathway in our high schools. We've made some good progress in terms of establishing manufacturing programs in our career technical education programs across the district, but that's really the end goal, is having automation technologies as a course pathway that's available for our students. It also looks like partnerships with local nonprofits and educational institutions. The next slide will walk you through our partnerships in a little bit greater detail. It also looks like teacher development, so some really good examples of that would be Tesla took the lead over the summer in establishing a teacher externship where teachers could actually go to the Gigafactory. It was an 8-week program. They were working on a variety of different subjects. For the CTE department, one of the most important things that they were working on was the development of automation technologies curriculum, because once we have those courses available for kids to get into, obviously it's really important for our teachers to have something to teach. So up to this point, thanks to Tesla's help with our externship program, the entire first year of the automation technologies curriculum has been built out, and that's the first of a 3-year core program. So it's really, really important to have that kind of teacher development available. Another example, and Dale can speak in greater detail about that, but another example would be over the summer, our region hosted the Robotics Academy of Nevada. There was a Robotics Academy in the north, and there was also a Robotics Academy in the south. And through the collaboration of a variety of different agencies and institutions, we had, I believe, over 65 teachers from across northern Nevada, not just Washoe County School District, but we had 65 teachers attend classes and trainings over the course of a week. And they were able to get a lot more training around robotics integration, around STEM integration into their content areas. And there was also an optional training for teachers to learn how to be coaches and advisors for teams. So just some really important infrastructure work.
Mr. Hartzog, just on the development of the curriculum, what's the timeline? When do you expect to start having that offered?
It's a great question. So we hope to have our first automation technologies course on offer at a school starting next year.
Ooh, yay.
McQueen High School would be one of our prime places to host that program. So knowing that we have that curriculum available is really, really important for us as we put a teacher in that position.
That's exciting.
More broadly, it also looks like school and district infrastructure, not just in terms of the schools, but across our community. One of the finest examples of the infrastructure that the Tesla investment is helping us to build would be the gentleman who's sitting to my right, Mr. Dale Payne. The Tesla investment has funded his position as our robotics coordinator for 3 years. So having somebody attached out of our office whose sole mission and purpose is to provide access and opportunity for every child in the Washoe County School District to access high-quality robotics programming and STEM integration in their classes is very, very important for us. So it's a huge win for us in terms of our school and district infrastructure that's available. We're also in the pre-planning phases with Tesla to work on further developing the facilities at McQueen High School, especially to make them a world-class robotics showcase school. So that's another important thing that we're working on as well.
How was McQueen selected? I know they have the manufacturing technology, which is new this year, exciting, but why McQueen and not other schools?
These gentlemen can speak to more detail. My impression is that they have particularly strong teams in terms of robotics. They have 2 teams. They have 2 instructors who are very, very committed. A lot of this work is really driven by the talent pipeline, by the staff that you have to work with. So A, making sure that you have staff that are adequately trained, and then B, making sure that you have staff that really, really want to carry this work forward.
Gotcha.
That's really what drives that. And then revamping the manufacturing technology facilities at that school, that's been a years-long effort, and just putting those facilities to the highest and best use, it makes for kind of the perfect storm.
So it sounds like you're building the building blocks by having teachers getting excited about it, because that's what we need to make sure that the infrastructure isn't wasted and that we can invest in other schools. So that's
Precisely.
And it's something, it's really exciting because they almost become community centers. And we've seen, 30 schools can work with this one center on weekends, like machining parts, building that. And so it kind of creates a collaborative culture that's super exciting that we see at work. And so we were fortunate to be able to host for Professional Development Day. The entire staff of McQueen High School came out. I think it was 2017. Or 2000. Yeah, so we had I think it was like buses of about 95 staff members came out and toured Gigafactory in different areas. And it's absolutely been a collaborative investment with us, but also with other companies in the community. So I just, that is a really exciting thing, because when we're all on the same page building these programs, that's what we can all recruit out of.
Great. Question from Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is very exciting for the district as a whole. But speaking specifically of McQueen, is there any type of, plan or benefit to really taking this down to perhaps some of the feeder schools, a couple of the middle schools that go? Because if kids can get interested earlier, as we found in developing the signature programs, and they're more likely to go in that direction once they get into high school. Is that a part of this as we go forward?
Dale Payne for the record. I'll be happy to speak to that. As a parent and not just an employee, Sarah Winnemucca is one of our schools in that grouping.
Yeah.
And they are bringing on a elementary school FLL league this year.
Do you want to break down the FLL, what that means?
Yeah.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, FLL is the first LEGO league. It is integrated primarily from, say, 3rd grade through middle school. It's one of the 2 platforms that we offer through the Tesla investment for elementary and middle school. The other one's through the REC Foundation or VEX Robotics, which is their IQ platform. And schools have a choice in which platform they're going to go with. So, but that is one of our primary goals, is to establish vertical integration with all of our high schools that now have robotics. I think we're 3 middle schools short in the middle school levels. And we doubled our elementary schools this year and added, I think, 10 more from the 10 that we had. So, we've experienced nearly 100% double growth in almost every category. And on top of that, we're trying to integrate the format of the platform that they're using. So if they go with a FIRST robotics platform in the elementary and the middle schools, we want to make sure they have a FIRST platform to grow into, because a lot of their meets and competitions, they all come together. So there's really an ecosystem and a community that builds up with them. And so we do try to do that wherever possible. But ultimately, it's always a site choice by the administrator and the coaches and teachers. And they have interests based on their students, and they know their students best. So we support them in whichever direction they want to go.
That's great. And I know some of my colleagues on the board and I have been to the first Lego competitions, and boy, it's very exciting to watch that. So yeah, anybody who hasn't been, definitely make it a point to go. Sorry to interrupt you all, but
we had about 45 employees over this past season volunteer either at one event or judge or mentor or coach, and it's something that has really inspired us as a company to do this company-wide.
That's great.
And so this is something we started here, but we're working on building that now. And yeah, to your point, I mean, we will invest in a high school and at least one feeder middle school and at least one feeder elementary. And so that was starting with last year, and then each year that kind of compounds out. And so we'll have students that start in that elementary school that are just expecting to see those programs in perpetuity for their education.
great. Okay. Sorry, please continue.
No worries. So, being a former Lancer myself, at least working at McQueen, I also have to give a shout out to the administration at McQueen as well, Amy Marable and the rest of her administrative team, as well as her CTE teachers and staff. They've done a tremendous job in terms of generating interest in their manufacturing program, which would also speak to one of the reasons why McQueen is one of our most productive sites to really carry robotics forward in the future. Lastly, when we speak of school and district infrastructure, we're not just talking about facilities. As we've said, we're also talking about changing the culture and changing the events programming throughout the year. So one last great example of the infrastructure would be last year, through the coordination of Dale and one of our robotics partners, we were able to host a robotics showcase in the spring for students. We had 1 or 2 dozen kids show up on a Saturday morning and just do robotics, and it was a really, really great event.
Wow.
So that's going to be something that we move forward with more frequently in the future. We actually have a picture in our presentation, the next couple of slides from that event, so it was really, really great. And then lastly, establishing more pathways to employment, doing work with Tesla has been doing work in terms of making investments in Jobs for America's graduates. Another good example of that would be, of course, their manufacturing development program, which ties into robotics as well. Chris could talk to you. Do you want to talk about the MDP really?
Sure. Yeah, and so this was exciting news. Last Monday, we had 46 high school graduates from across 37 high schools in the state start a full-time career at Tesla as part of the manufacturing development program. And it's a graduate apprenticeship program where students are getting full-time roles at Tesla, so full benefits, equity, competitive pay. We have pre-negotiated housing that the students paid for. But it's affordable based on their wage. And then we have 7-day-a-week shuttle service, so that this is an equitable option and you don't have to have a car. And then the last part and most impactful part is every student gets a 20-credit scholarship in automation and robotics as part of that education. And that's a partnership with Truckee Meadows Community College, where they're working online in lab-based curriculum, so it works around the shift schedules. And it has been, we piloted this in 2017 with 13 students, and we were asked how fast can we physically grow this in a year, and we said we can grow at 5x. And so in 2018 we had 54 students start, and we're targeting around 50 to 60 students every year to start their careers at Gigafactory from across the state. And we want this to be a new tradition, and so part of the work with Jobs for America's graduates is also open sourcing the program side of this to get 4 to 5 other companies every year also doing apprenticeships, because then that has that long-term effect on changing that mindset at home of college and career. And that's, increasing those types of options is something that's really exciting for us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that investment, and thanks for being a good corporate partner and providing for all the needs for those young people. That's great. Okay.
Moving forward, just a list, and this is not all-inclusive by any means, but this is a list of our various Tesla grantees and partners that come through the Tesla investment. One of the things missing, one of the agencies on there is UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, of course, and then one of our other partners through the state would be the Governor's Office of Science and Innovation and Technology as well.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yes,
then-
Vice President Raymond. Mhm.
Yes.
I have a question on that one. I just wondered if you had heard anything about how the Girls in STEM camp went last weekend at Sierra Nevada Journeys.
It was amazing. We had, I believe it was over 100 students from a diverse set of middle schools here locally, and I got a photo of all the students doing the same, like a version of the same Lego exercise in manufacturing and inventory control, at middle school level, and having those conversations. And then there were inspiring speeches from blockchains from some other companies as well locally here, and that was really an exciting new tradition for us at Grizzly Creek Ranch, and so we want to continue building that program, and then also making sure that those students are hearing about these robotics opportunities, these sustainability opportunities, and just, sometimes it's just making those connection points, and then having the mentors, that say, hey, this person looks like me, this is a career for me, and it's about, talking about that early and often. But
Great.
it was a really fun weekend.
Yeah, I assumed it would be, and I think that's just thank you for your partnership there too, because I think that is a niche area that not just that they're female, but from those title schools and getting them out there and at such a reduced price, where you're overlapping, that immersion in the outdoors with the technology. So
yeah, and we had some great partnerships with City Council that also invested in being able to have more students get access there, and then. Yeah, it's absolutely, we're building an additional program every February as part of Global Engineering Week. Wow. It was a pilot we started at Gigafactory 2 years ago with 60 middle school girls to go through the factory and then do civil, mechanical, and electrical exercises. We increased that last year to 200 students, and we want to continue to compound that globally, and that's as a result of the work here with you all.
That's great. Very exciting.
And with that, I will turn it over to Dale, who's going to talk about robotics programs.
Thanks again for having us here. The first thing I'll say is that robotics programming is moving at the speed of a Tesla, a Model S in ludicrous mode, probably. I came on board in March, and what I can say is that it is incredible. 20 years in education, 10 years as a CTE teacher, I have never seen any program be as impactful for students and as engaging with students. And I've judged Skills USA, and I've done FBLA and DECA, all fantastic programs, but I have not witnessed anything like this in my 20 years. Wow. My first thing is I'll say, please don't let this be another initiative that we don't get behind, because I want it for my children, and I want it for our children. When I first came on board, like some of you, I went and saw a robotics competition up in Carson City. I thought, oh, this is pretty neat. Look at the kids. They're making these robots do this stuff. And, I heard much of what you've heard here today. And I said, well, what's the best way for me to really learn about what this robotic stuff is? And I was voluntold, one of those things, to go be a judge at Skills USA. And one of our community partners sat next to me, and we judged for a full day these students. And it walked us through their engineering notebook. And that's when I realized that these students, through a gaming format, through a league format, they are taking a problem in a competition. They are creating and designing solutions to that problem. They are custom manufacturing a hardware to solve that problem. They're using sensors and computer coding to autonomous mode these robots. They're even writing custom software to overcome the limitations of the hardware so they can win at this game. I went to Worlds and judged at Worlds. My arms are already standing up. I kid you not, the hair on my arms and my back. I've never seen anything. It's like sitting across the table from a full-blown engineer, but these are 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds that started robotics in elementary school. Right. They continued into middle school. Now they're in high school. These kids were writing algorithms and using math to calculate the inertia and force necessary to propel a plastic ball through the air using sensors to know where the robot was on the field, so they could just roll it over there, push a button, and the math did everything for them. I can't imagine that. You know, I had a corporate career before I became in education, and they're full-blown engineers. And it's like Chris said, it's because of robotics. And you know, when we look at what 75-something% of the students in robotics programs go on to engineering and STEM fields, robotics, in my mind, is the solution to that shortage of coding and manufacturing and automation skills. It opens the windows to AI for these students and the realities they'll face. You know, those jobs as truckers, you know, 4.5 million truckers are going to go away in 10 years.
Not before Tesla makes a long-haul truck, though, right?
Well, particularly long-haul truckers, right? But, you know, it really opened my eyes. I went up to NACTE and I met with folks from the state. And robotics is not just what we think it is. You know, we manufacture more in the United States than we ever have. We just don't have people doing it. We have people programming and designing those systems. We have robots milking cows in our agricultural classes and robots to sweep up the poop on the floor from you know, the cows. We have... farmers don't buy tractors anymore. They rent tractors that drive themselves. My family was farmers when I was growing up. I used to visit the farm and love driving the tractor. They don't do that anymore. They farm their entire field in 3 days. They have robots that fly over, drop down, and pick the weeds. They have fully automated, you know, robots that do surgeries. So, you know, the way that I would describe this to anybody who really wants to know what robotics is when I started off, you know, we were doing keyboarding on electric typewriters. And then we got the computers, and then we rolled those computers down into the middle schools, and now we have them in the elementary schools. Because those were universal skills that went across every curriculum. And yes, we want to put it in automation and manufacturing classes, but my vision for my children, our children's future, is that this is a universal skill. They may not have to be coders, but they're going to have to understand coders, and they're going to have to be able to be comfortable with AI in the future. And robotics is the means to do that, and it engages kids in a competitive format that they love. It's a perfect avenue for all those kids on the bubble that weren't sure where they fit. And this is such a perfect application for them. I am so proud to be part of this. I'm so thrilled to be able to sit here and tell you that. And that's what I tell everybody.
Couldn't tell that.
I'm so excited. Oh my God, to watch these kids, it's just humbling. Like, at first it blows your mind, and then you go home and go, oh man, like the kids just get really a lot smarter than we used to be. I mean, they must have, right? Because they're doing all these amazing things.
What can I just ask? What are we doing to support parents to be able to support their children? Because I can imagine this is intimidating in a lot of families.
What I can tell you is that in our showcase that we had at the end of last year, I had
and these are the pictures from that event.
Yeah, I had a group of 8 parents come up to me and said, "This is incredible." And we only had one elementary school at that competition and one middle school. And we paired them together to mentor. And these parents asked me, so, you know, same question. You know, what are we doing for our kids to help them continue with? I said, well, we're adding robotics in middle schools. So, you know, are we providing training to parents on how to code and interact? Not at this point. But we are increasing our capacity to support those students at every level. And we're inviting them out to get involved with our students in the elementary schools and participate. And we have volunteers that run tables and, you know, learn how to work the computers that do the scoring for the games. So that's where we're at right now.
And in a broader sense, just one of the broader initiatives of our office, and as this initiative gains traction, is just to educate our parents about the opportunities that are available out there. As these events, such as the showcase, take root, just word is going to be spreading.
And it would be, I think it would be helpful to have weekend showcases where parents can see this is what your child is learning, not just what it's produced and here's what your child can do with it, but here's a quick overview of what your child is learning. Because I know, you know, we want to make sure that the parents are very involved in their kids' education, and it can become pretty intimidating when your kid is learning all of this material that you have no idea how any of this works. So just a thought for the future.
Absolutely. We'll certainly look into that and how to support that as we move forward. Like I said, we're in ludicrous mode and we're going fast. There are so many people involved in this, from the universities to our colleagues in Clark County in my role, to Tesla, meetings with Owen, and you know. our EDON, and we're bringing all these people together. But what you see before you now on the boards is really the result of Tesla's investment. Last year we had 9 elementary schools, and I have even updated numbers now. We did add the 10 additional schools: Stead, Elmcrest, Incline, Sarah Winnemucca, Sun Valley, Natchez, Kate Smith, Dodson, Alice Maxwell, Lemelson. They all added elementary schools. And we did this in the last 2 months of the year, last year, when we brought these folks on board, and found the teachers at each of these schools, which often require 2 teachers to coach a team. We found teachers willing to step up and do this.
That's great.
And in the middle schools, we're up to 4 additional middle schools. Sparks, Swope, O'Brien, and Pine are all adding robotics programs this year, additional robotics programs. On the high schools, we added 3 more. North Valley's is in the pipeline still. Ace High School, they sent 5 teachers to the training that we had, the RAN training that we had in the summertime. Gerlach, we're even looking at moving schools out there. My role, because it's funded through Tesla, is a broader initiative, so I support all of the northern Nevada districts. We had 14 when we sent this information. We have 15 now, 7 elementary, 3 middles, and 5 high schools. So if you look at the amount of time that we had to recruit and get new schools on, compounded by 6th grade going to the middle schools and the teacher changes and the admin changes, these numbers are phenomenal.
Yeah.
111% in the elementary, 80% in the middle school, and 30% in the high school, even though we already had teams in the high schools. So when I look at the amount of time that we had, the spark is there. And like I said, it is moving in ludicrous mode. Everybody's getting on board. These teachers are beyond excited about what they're doing.
They're catching it from you.
Yeah.
The parents are like, my kids are doing this. I'm like, it's awesome,
Don't give him any caffeine. I'm just.
I have not had any caffeine since this morning. I kid you not. I haven't, and it's that's what it does to you when you get involved with these kids at that level and see what they're doing. And I will add that all these coaches, they didn't know how to code. Most of them, they didn't know this stuff. That the kids pick it up. The kids are learning it. We're sending teachers to training. They're all learning it together at the same time, and it truly is. It's the future, and it's here, and our kids are getting it. And I'll even share a few things. That was recruitment last year. Recruitment is every day. Recruitment is, for me, is here today. We're working with our Title I office to bring robotics to our after-school programming through 21st Century grants that they have. 15 to 20 more teams will join our elementary schools this year if we can make that happen. We're working with our JROTC folks because there's so many applications for robotics in the military. So it's not just, in addition to CTE and our gifted and talented folks that are going to speak to you later, they already had 5 robotics programs in their schools. So, all of these entities within our organization are coming together to get behind this. All of these teachers are coming together. If you look at all those teachers, each one of those teams, 19 for the elementary school, that's 2 teachers per team.
Wow.
And some schools have a FIRST platform and an REC platform. That's possibly 3 or 4 teachers per school. So our teachers are doing this. Fortunately, we have stipend support from Tesla to help them through the next 5 years, which for the amount of time that's required is so appreciated by our teachers. We're already laying the foundations for competitive leagues. FIRST operates an entire league of their own that our schools go and participate in. But for our REC partners, we're creating a monthly scrimmage and 2 more competitions in the fall and the spring. Wow. And our students will be going around to other schools so that we take the enthusiasm from one school and we bring 3 other schools to say McQueen or Sparks to their school, and they get to work on a competitive field and really put it to use. So we're going to the next level. We're in talks with UNR's engineering program to partner with them to bring additional robotics and equipment so that if we have the starter kits and the 1 or 2 robots at a school, there's a possibility, and I'll share it now, cutting news. There's a possibility they could be adding 8 to 10 robots at all of our schools so that we can have every student have access to this and have true equity for all of our kids at a school to tap into that. But there is a caveat, right? They want to send their engineering students to help mentor our kids when they do it. Oh, twist my arm, right? This news hit Friday. I went home almost in tears. I couldn't believe it.
Can we bottle whatever it is here?
The excitement.
A meeting with Dale is part of every onboarding for new teams.
That's
so
great.
That's
great.
And this all starts from the spark that Tesla put out there. the demand that they expressed and said that's here, our
Wow.
teachers getting behind it, our directors with the support that Josh and the rest of our team have given us as we ramped up so quick. You know, like I said, I'm humbled, I'm grateful, I'm thankful. I see my children, you know, getting the benefit from this, and so
That's
and
great.
as a parent, I'm over the moon too. So it's
That's great.
it is such a blessing. It really is, and it's so needed. You know, some other school district, maybe down south, that's having some other challenges, may have been doing robotics for 15 or 18 years, but we're going to catch them in two.
Oh, well, yep, and thank you, Chris and Tesla, for being the sort of the genesis of all of this. You know, we all hoped that Tesla would have this kind of impact in our community, and we're just so blessed and fortunate that that our region has that. So thank you. You guys, I know you want to finish up. So.
I would turn it over to Chris if you want to close us out.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just a slide that talks again about the programs that Josh mentioned is really thinking about these through every way, and is we need the program development, we need the teacher confidence, we need to empower our teachers for any program we're putting in, and so we'll continue to build whatever is needed in that to support these programs. I mean, we often hear, you know, oh, robotics is really cool, but I don't teach that subject, or I'm not in that. And that was the inspiration behind creating this Robotics Academy of Nevada, is how do we empower 200 teachers a year to see that these options to facilitate the program aren't solely for one teacher that has had several years of engineering experience. And so opening that up, and we're working together to identify more schools and more infrastructure investments. And then again, love to continue to partner on apprenticeship programs, pathways to employment with businesses in our community. It's a really exciting next few years ahead in this investment.
That's great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you from all of us, and we also appreciate you making time to come today. And I know we bumped you from our previous meeting, so thanks for your flexibility on that as well.
Of course.
Colleagues of Dr. McNeil.
Well, I was just going to thank very much Dale and you know, Josh. We really appreciate all the work that you have done. I mean, you're uber excited. And I want to really send out a thank you to Chris and Tesla, because it's these types of long-term commitments with resource backing that a school district is able to do the work that you are doing. And I can't emphasize that enough. You all have provided the resources so that we can have somebody that is a champion such as Dale. And that means so much when it really happens within our schools. And it's very exciting because next week, 17 Nevada superintendents will be here visiting Washoe County School District. And one of the nice things that they get to do is they're going to go visit Tesla and Switch and Google. So I just really want to thank you for that as well.
Excellent.
And we're very fortunate to be working with you all as partners, and I mean, Josh and Dale, and it just becomes contagious. It absolutely is, and it's how do we build more, faster, and you know, the teams are, yeah.
Great. Any other questions, comments from trustees? I know we have some public comments, so I'll call public comment.
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I just want to say thank you to Chris and Tesla. When we were talking about the original deal with Tesla and the governor's Business Economic Development Office with the state, part of the discussion was how they were going to partner with Washoe County School District and do a lot of the things that are being talked about today. And it appears that staff and the administration are very pleased with that, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. All right. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you, and thanks for the great work. And I know there's a whole team of other people behind you, all of those teachers and those administrators and principals, all the folks at Tesla who are volunteering their time to help with our teams. So we just thank everyone for this investment in our students, because this is the way forward. Great. Thanks so much. Okay. Okay. Up next, Mr. Mathers. Discussion possible action to adopt Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-012A 2019 A 2019A School Improvement Bond Resolution authorizing the district to issue its general obligation limited tax school improvement bonds, Series 2019A, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $75 million. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. With me today, the young man with me today is Ryan Henry, a partner at Sherman & Howard, our bond counsel. As much as I would like, there is no way I'm going to be able to make this presentation as exciting as that last one. Right? There is just no way.
Come on, Mark.
It's an aspirational goal for me. It's like a long-term goal.
Oh.
Yeah. So, as you said, we are here today for your approval of the bond resolution for $75 million of rollover bonds. These are bonds that pledge the property tax, the debt rate that we receive. I know it's been probably confusing for some of you in that we've come to you regularly for bond actions, and part of that is because we're doing two bond sales kind of in parallel. So we have this rollover bond issuance of $75 million, and this is the last stop, if you will, for board action on that. And then we also have our next round of WC1 bonds that'll fund Wild Creek and a number of other schools as well. And so you'll see me again next month for the bond, or actually early October for the bond resolution for that. So I know I'm here all the time to talk about bonds, and it may be confusing, but again, these are for the rollover bonds. And so just to recap, we came to you in April for approval to go to the Debt Management Commission for authorization, for their authorization of these bonds. You gave that to us. We went to the Debt Management Commission in May, Andrew will remember, for actually authorization for $200 million of bonds over the next 3 years. So this is the first series of those probably 3 series. And then we also went to the Bond Oversight Panel, who adopted an approval resolution in June. And so we've been waiting actually to submit this bond resolution to you pending your approval of the fiscal year 20 capital renewal program that you gave in late June. And then the last board meeting you gave authorization for 2019-2020 A major project program. And so between those two programs, you authorized $82 million worth of projects, and so for the most part, the $75 million today would fund those projects that you previously approved.
Mark, just for the record, could you itemize what some of those projects are?
Oh boy.
Well, you've got the chart.
Yeah. So our capital renewal program is a series of school repairs. Is this a test? Is this to make it more exciting?
No, this is transparency.
Okay, right. So our capital renewal program is really just a whole host of myriad of projects, from HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, to roofing projects, to electrical projects, to IT upgrades at our schools.
But these are all renewal projects. These are not new construction.
That's right.
Just want to make sure and clarify that for folks.
Thank you. So these are existing schools, generally in our inner core, that we're upgrading for all those things and more. We also have our energy retrofit program that is included in those capital renewal program authorizations. And then in August, we actually, or 2 weeks ago, you actually authorized the Cold Springs area elementary school. So that was exciting, in addition to the design of the Hug High School repurposing. So a number of projects that are important to the district, and so again, this is part of the overall financing plan for the district. I think with that, I will turn it over. Yes?
One other question. What is our current bond rating?
So we are split rated right now. We have a strong middle AA rating from Standard & Poor's, and Moody's downgraded us several years ago to a high single A rating. We actually had discussions with the rating agencies last week. We are hopeful that on our next round of bond sales, that will, at that point, we'll have our audited financials, and we are hopeful that Moody's will upgrade us back to a AA rating.
Okay.
So they were very pleased with what we had told them about fiscal year 19 as well as the fiscal year 2020 budget. So again, we're very hopeful, but again, AA rating's very strong, and again, a high single A is again, we hope to improve upon.
For a school district, that's pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Henry, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, but for the record, Ryan Henry from Sherman and Howard. I guess all I would add is if the board should move forward tonight, the plan would be to sell these bonds on September 10th and then look to close on September 26th. So as Mark stated, this is really the last board action required to issue these bonds.
Okay, and with the economic news we're watching, probably a good time to be selling bonds.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen interest rates plummet, and the market is factoring in a series of easings by the Federal Reserve, so it's kind of already baked in the cake, if you will, and so it is good timing.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Public comment?
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Madam President. We're actually neutral on the item, not for or against, and mainly that's because we believe it was wrong for the 2015 Nevada legislature to remove the citizens of Washoe County from the process of school bond approvals. Once the school board approves this $200 million credit line, it'll be too late for the taxpayers of Washoe County to vote on borrowing that much money, and those voters are still going to have to pay for it. You took us out of the equation. Once you borrow this money, it's going to be too late. It'll be too late to switch to a pay-as-you-go plan or anything else. So while the idea of what we're doing to meet the demand for new schools, and it is all over the place, and it does appear to be going well, it was wrong to take the voters out of the equation. That only leaves two options. We can either reverse or let expire SB 207 in the 23rd or 25th legislative session, or create a separate board of capital construction that is a separate elected body, and we will be proposing that as a law known as NRS 386.140 to create that board. We also believe that you guys don't make enough money, and I have been to the Nevada legislature and proposed salary increases for school boards on 2 different sessions. In Washoe County, that should be $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and we'll be making that proposal as well. Both boards should make that much money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And as noted by Mr. Mathers, this did go before the Capital Protection Funding Committee, which is an independent committee of elected officials and others who are appointed to review these. So, and this particular action is not the $200 million total. This is $75 million. The $200 million was primarily from our WC1 funds, which were voter approved. So just to clarify some of that. Okay, is there a motion to approve? Dr. Taylor, it is your day for motions.
I just
You
love
are
to approve.
in motion.
I love to approve money to pay for school.
All right.
I'm sure we all do. I'm sure we all do. I move that the Board of Trustees adopts Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-012A to 2019A School Improvement Board Resolution authorizing the district to issue general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $75 million.
That is, yeah. Got it. Got it. Okay, is there a second? Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any other discussion? Would you like to say something, Nathan? You had that look on your face. Yeah. Mr. Noble.
Just to address briefly the concerns brought up by our public comment, although the money might have come from the place that he mentioned, I would argue that capital projects is one of the most essential aspects of school funding. Capital projects is really the bedrock that education is built on. Without the work that they do, students like myself and my peers cannot have an education. And so you bring up a valid point, but even still, it is very, very important, crucial.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we will be putting millions more dollars into our existing schools, which is great. Okay. Next up, our Department of Gifted and Talented Education program update, including student enrollment and GATE programs for the 2019-2020 school year, and next steps for school within a school programming in the 2021 school year, and possible action to provide direction to the superintendent regarding a possible regional model for GATE, which means Gifted and Talented Education, Programming and Services. Ms. Barsdorf and Ms. DiMartino, sorry.
Thank you, President Simon Holland. Interim Superintendent Dr. McNeil and members of the board, thank you for letting us come in front of you today. Again, I'm joined here today by Sherry DiMartino, who is our Director for Gifted and Talented Education for our school district. And what we'd like to do in our presentation today is a couple of things. We want to update you on gifted and talented programming that is occurring this school year. We have some updated numbers for you as well, of course, since we're in our third week. And then we want to kind of dig in, I think, a little bit more and have a conversation around our School Within a School, our SWAS programming, which is located at 3 of our elementary schools, and a potential plan moving forward for programming for the 2020-21 school year. So
Great.
If that sounds good to you, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry, who's going to kind of start big picture, and then we'll move our way down.
Thank you, Ms. Barsdorf, and welcome, Ms. DiMartino. And I loved watching your smile when you were hearing about all of these great things I know that you're quite familiar with in terms of our robotics program.
I love the robotics. Very excited about that. Okay, so we're going to start with just an overview of GATE identification. It starts at the state level with our NAC, and the NAC 388 says that we need
Nevada Administrative Code.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Is our cognitive ability. We need to look at a 98th percentile or above, and that is identified on a state matrix, which is new over the last 2 years that our state does have this matrix. It also states that any student who has a 99.9 percentile or higher is considered profoundly gifted, but we need to make sure that we do 150 minutes of differentiated instruction per week. With the NRS 392A.030, it basically talks about our profoundly gifted students, and that is, again, the 99.9 percentile on an individual administration of a test, and we usually use the WISC-5 for that particular test. Any student is considered profoundly gifted at the 99.9. When we're looking at our caseload, we also need to look at a 65-to-1 caseload for our gifted and talented with our itinerant services. Our class size, which is our SWAS, our magnet, and our high school institute, we're looking at a 20-to-1 ratio class size. We're allowed to increase by 10%, which gives us that 22-to-1 is what we normally staff with. There is a possibility of having a teacher's aide if we have 24 students who are gifted and talented in a single class. And I have to thank you. Everybody was very excited that for the very first time we have a GATE board policy. 6525 went into effect last year. Thank you again. It really shows that the district supports the gifted programming and all that we're doing for our students, so thank you. Go on to the next one. When we look at our GATE assessment, we want to make sure we have a very unbiased assessment. So we screen our students in 2nd and 5th grade. We are using the NNAT or the COGAT assessment. We're looking at students that get a 98 percentile for gifted services, or if they meet the requirements set by the state, which is 15 points on the state matrix. And again, 99 percentile we use for identification for the SWAS programming. So if they get a 99 on the universal, we then do another one-on-one testing with our GATE psychologist to make sure that they are truly a 99 with a WISC. The state matrix, I shared earlier, that went into effect about 2 years ago. We also worked with the state to look at a pilot study. We did the Niglieri, which is called the NNAT, versus the COGAT, and what we found is the Niglieri really supported our students that had a second language, and we were able to identify more students with that. We do look at out-of-state testing. We knew that our charter schools, our home schools, out-of-district students, we wanted to make sure that they could become eligible for gifted services if they decided to come back to us. So we make sure that we have every semester a Saturday assessment for those students to get them eligible for hopefully future Washoe County School District gifted programming. We do have referrals, so if a school site feels that there is a student who would be a great candidate for the gifted program, we do allow the MTSS process to occur, and we look at identifying through that process as well. We meet weekly with an administrative review team. It's consisted of a GATE administrator, our GATE psychologist, our facilitators and counselors, and we look at blind process. So any student that comes into us as an MTSS or an out of district, we look at all of the test scores and that student to make determinations for eligibility. We do have reciprocity, so out-of-state students who meet our criteria here, we will also have an administrative review and try to make sure that they are eligible for services here. We did start what's called a GATE watch list. When we looked at the state matrix, if students were very close to the score, but they were missing eligibility by a point or two, we made sure that we watched them for an entire school year, and every time a MAP score was posted, we recalculated those scores to see if we could identify them as gifted.
Okay. And just as you're going, if you could remember to explain acronyms.
I'm so sorry,
That's
yes.
okay. Like MTSS is multi-tiered
Tiered.
system support,
Yes.
which provides support services, wraparound services for our students.
Okay. My apologies.
That's okay. I'm just, we want to
And I'm trying to
help
be
our
respectful
public.
of time,
That's
too,
right.
and try to go fast.
Appreciate that.
So GATE Talent Search was brand new last year, and we had a lot of success with that. What we did is our assessment department followed all of MAP's scores, and we looked at all high potential candidates to make sure that we weren't missing somebody. So they may have tested, or the MTSS missed it, but our talent search didn't miss it. We looked at all of those high ability students at every school site.
Wow.
And then new last year also was our Title I target school search. And what we did is after the universal screening, we looked at our Title I schools, and any student who had an 80 percentile or higher on that screener, what we did is we ran them through the state matrix, and then we sent out our GATE psychologists to do a one-on-one testing, and we did find more students as well that way.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for that additional effort.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so on to programming. So we do have the GATE High School Institute, which is housed at HUG. We do have an annual application process for any identified GT student. In 2018-19, we served 119 students. This year, we did go ahead and we are serving, let me just get the absolute, it was spot on at 86 students in the 1920 school year.
Any reasons why it dropped so much?
Students are just graduating, and just how we identified students years ago was a little bit different than the up-and-coming students.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see the numbers change.
Mm-hmm. The funnel has changed.
The funnel is changing,
Okay.
yes. The high school advisory, which is where our facilitator works with the high schools to make sure that students are placed or can answer any questions about gifted programming. We service 1859 in the 1819 school year, and this year we are doing 1852. So our projection was a little high, but we're really close to the same number of students. We have the internship program that we work with CTE with. We have merged the GATE internship with the CTE last year as well. And we did service 64 gifted students in the 18-19 school year. And we do not know the projected numbers yet because they are still working on that. With our itinerant service, we serviced 640 students. In the 18-19 school year, we are down by 24, and we are servicing 594 this school year for the itinerant service. Okay, the itinerant service is our pull-out and our collaborative model, and we have that at every elementary and middle school. We do service for 150 minutes with our itinerant teachers for that particular program. Our AAP, also known as the Advanced Academic Placement, we also have the GEMS model, which we implemented last year as well. That is the gifted education model of support. And what we do is we cluster group the students at their zone school with a GT endorsed teacher. So we have had a push last year to work with all the different school sites to try to get as many GT endorsed teachers at each of the school sites so that they will now be servicing the students with the gifted office support. Last year, we did have several locations that were different than this year. We did service 232 students last year. This year, we're servicing 259 students. We did have several school sites change, and the reason the school sites did change was because we had GT endorsed teachers that moved to different locations, and they no longer had a GT endorsed teacher at that particular grade level that was necessary.
Okay. Vice President Raymond?
I just was wanting clarification. So for these two models, the AAP and the GEMS, the students are spending the entire weekday in a separate classroom with only other GT students?
No. Okay. So with the AAP model, they cluster group high ability and GT together at the school site. In the GEMS model, they have different levels of ability with a cluster of the GT kids. So we always try to cluster group the GT kids with that grade level endorsed teacher. The difference in the two model is one is only with high ability. That was not feasible for a lot of schools that had changes in the amount of classrooms. So they may only have had 2 third-grade classrooms. They were not able to cluster group high ability and GT together, but they also invested the time to have endorsed teachers. So we wanted to honor that. So we work carefully with those schools to make sure that we give them the support they need, but it is the principal discretion on how they fill that classroom.
So the cluster model that you're talking about for the AAP would look more like a school within a school classroom?
So yes, so even with the GEMS model, we are looking at making sure that the rigor is there and that we can advance the kids at their appropriate pace for the gifted students.
So it's not just an hour and 50 minutes
nope,
of the
it's
day
all day long with a GT endorsed teacher. God bless you.
Is that an area that you see potential future growth, or is it just dependent upon kind of numbers and classroom space availability and endorsed teachers, I suppose?
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors.
And that is our biggest challenge, is getting the GT endorsed teachers. The state grant, we budget money to every year to try to get the teachers endorsed, whoever would like to be endorsed, and we do a reimbursement through the grant for that. But we know the teachers' plates are really full, and it's very difficult for them to also take classes. But we do have several sites that have invested in this style. And one school, Drake Elementary, really decided to push it to the envelope, and they got 8 teachers endorsed last year to be a first-time gifted GEMS program, and they even assigned our gifted students mentors at that school site. So we've been working very carefully with Drake to make sure that we can support them and all the accomplishments of getting 8 teachers endorsed.
That's great. I think, just to end on a personal opinion, I think that I really like the idea of the GEMS model. I think integrating students at all levels in these classrooms is so important, and I know it doesn't work for every student to be in a classroom with a wide variety of abilities. But, you know, it's something I know we often talk about with our special education students, and I think it kind of goes both ways. I think it's just so important to be able to provide that classroom setting whenever we can.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, Nathan. Can you? Oh, there. She got it for you.
Thank
Yep.
you. Just out of curiosity, what's the average class size for one of the GT programs?
Okay, so the average class size for a GT program, we have to stay within the state, which is a 22-to-1 ratio. However, when we're looking at our AAP or GEMS, that is the district class size.
So
Yes, go ahead.
with the 22-to-1 ratio, each and every one of these teachers is GT approved or endorsed, I guess.
That is correct.
All right.
Okay, good.
Great question.
Yep, very good.
Okay, next up is our middle school magnet program. We have an annual application process that begins in November. Last year, our sites were Clayton, Mendive, Pine, and Swope. We serviced 482 students last year. This year, we have Clayton, we have Pine, we have swapped Mendive to Sky Ranch, and we have Swope. And our projected numbers were 485, but our actual numbers were 484. So we were almost perfect on that one. But our school within a school, they did it one step better because their projected was 142, and we actually have 142 for our SWAS program. So last year's locations were Collin Ranch, GOM, Huntsberger, and Whitehead. As the board knows, we did decide to close Whitehead, and we now have 3 sites, Collin Ranch, Huntsberger, and GOM.
Dr. McNeil?
I just wanted to clarify, Sherry, so for the
Yes.
magnet programs, would you clarify that the application process and how that's handled?
Absolutely. So what we do is we let all of the GT the GT identified students that are at the middle school level, we let them know that our application process is open. They do not need to be profoundly gifted like our SWAS programming. Any identified GT students can apply. We do a blind process, so when they fill out the application, we look at their cognitive score. We put it into a matrix with the cognitive score, their grades, their MAP scores, recommendations, grades, and we calculate all of those scores. Once we get those scores and we tally them up, they are put into a large document, and we look at those top scores and where the parents have requested that they go and at what school site. And then we fill the site accordingly. So at no time do we know who that student is. It is strictly on that matrix.
And we don't provide transportation.
We do not provide transportation to our magnet programming.
And that's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge because it does leave some students out for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. School within a school is for our oh no, I did that one. Sorry. I was like, wait a minute, I just did that one. Okay, so the feeder schools for Collin Ranch are listed. We have quite a few that feed into our Collin Ranch.
Wow. That's a lot of geography.
Okay, Pezzer. Yeah, we
Silver
cover a
Lake
lot. And we do have 3 classrooms at Collin Ranch. For GOM.
Yes, go ahead, Dr.
I'm sorry,
Taylor.
Sherry, if I can
Yes.
interrupt. Thank you, Madam President. So any of the students at these schools, God bless you, that have been identified,
yes,
right, based upon the system you talked about already, any of those students from these schools can go to the Collin Ranch SWAS program. They can apply.
Yes, so
I know it's an application process.
Yeah, it is an
correct? Yes.
application process, but if the student qualifies for profoundly gifted services, they can attend one of these, attend one of our SWAS locations, and we do provide transportation.
You do for the SWAS program.
Do it for SWAS.
For the magnet.
That is correct.
So a student at Beck, let's say for an example, who qualifies as profoundly gifted, can get transportation to Collin.
That is correct.
To be involved in that SWAS program when the programming is occurring and so on.
That is correct.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
from Cold Springs or from Gomes or,
Yeah.
that's
From
a-
Winnemucca, not the
Yeah.
city Winnemucca, but
Right.
the school
Yes.
Winnemucca.
So we do work very closely. Bonnie Polaro is our SWAS facilitator, and each year she works very closely with transportation to get a list out, and so that parents will know.
That's an amazing service, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, transportation has been so helpful with GT in making sure that we have the information, and they post it on their website so that parents can access through transportation about what the schedule will be for what school site.
Mr. Martin is hearing these compliments. Yeah.
And
yes, go
You
ahead.
take 'em?
Yes.
I'll take chocolate later, Rick.
Vice President Raymond.
Is it? I thought I understood that the transportation is provided from the zoned school.
So we do look at the zone school. Rick, do you want to answer?
So the student gets to their zoned school, and then they are provided the transportation to the SWAS.
I knew I'd get my opportunity. For the record, Rick Martin, Director of Transportation. Yes, for the way that the transportation is developed for that is that the pickup is at the zone school of the student. So say, as Trustee Taylor was talking about earlier, it was based on the fact that if we had someone at Beck, we would pick that student up at Beck and then transport them to Collin Ranch. We actually have a couple of students that are out at Gomes that we're transporting to Collin Ranch, so that type of thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, so the feeder schools for GOM last year, we did have 3 sites last year for the SWAS program for GOM. That, of course, has increased, and we will show you the slide for Whitehead, and it's the combination of the 2. These are the feeder schools for Huntsberger for our SWAS program. Incline, we do not have transportation. And here are the ones from last year from Whitehead. And again, all of these schools are now a feeder school to GOM. Okay, so when we look at our current and projected SWAS enrollment sites, in 2018 we had 185 students we served. For Collin Ranch we had 44, GOM we had 33, Huntsberger we had 79, and Whitehead we had 29. When we're looking at our location for the 1920, we did remove Whitehead, and those numbers at Whitehead reflect the 6th grade that was removed, and they went to Sky Ranch. For the locations this year, we have Collin Ranch at 43, GOM at 36, and Huntsberger at 63. Okay, and
I'm going to take it from here. So again, Deborah Beiersdorf. And I think just maybe a reminder as well, we start the application process late fall, and then we start in January along with working with other departments such as business and finance to determine allocations and so forth based on projections, same that we do with other allocations. And our Whitehead projection at the time was 13. Due in part, as Sherry mentioned, to moving the 6th graders from Whitehead out to Mendive. And then I also wanted to add as well that while we're very grateful that our parents of our SWAS students want to take advantage, our profoundly gifted students want to take advantage of the SWAS program, they don't have to. And we ensure that those students are being, they're receiving services at their zone school if they choose to stay there as well. So this particular slide in your packet, we wanted to include, I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, we wanted to drill down to, I think that what we're asking of the board today for guidance. We wanted to show the cost or the budget information because we have received questions. I know you all have as well. Why move the 13 students at that time that were projected to go to Whitehead? Why move them to GOM versus potentially moving the students that were going to GOM from the 3 schools that you saw earlier, that the feeder schools to GOM, to Whitehead? So the intent of this particular slide is to show you the cost or the cost savings. We worked closely with our business office and then with our transportation department as well to get as close to this as we possibly could. I also want to point out as well that one of the most important reason for me as a chief academic officer and working with Sherry and staff to make the determination to recommend the closure of Whitehead was the efficacy of a school within a school program with 13 students in third, fourth, and fifth, 3 different grade levels. We would have gone down to 1 teacher with the ratio that we need to follow from the state. And there was concern about being able to provide robust, rigorous programming that our other SWAS students would be getting at the other SWAS schools. So that definitely figured into the final decision as well. So you'll see on that 4th line down the 1.0 full-time equivalent teacher allocation reduction. By moving the 13 students that were projected to attend Whitehead to GOM, it did not trigger another allocation. We had a teacher at GOM who retired. So we had 1 teacher that moved from the Whitehead program over to GOM. We didn't have to add another teacher there. And then I believe the other teacher from Whitehead is at Sky Ranch. Yes, that's right, went to Sky Ranch for Magnet. So again, wanted to provide this to you just to kind of maybe give you an idea, transportation, the routing costs, differences, and then you'll see the teacher allocation reduction is figured in there as well. Okay, oh, you want to click? Okay. So I think this one is maybe looks a little better on in your packets and on your laptops than it may up here. But we have the capability, and this is actually a pretty cool tool, through our capital projects office, our demographers office, to heat map is what we call this, but to take a look to see where student distribution is for all of our students who were projected to attend the school within a school, the SWAS programming this school year. And this particular slide is district-wide. And then the legend at the bottom will show you as the colors get a little bit more purple, and then a little dab of yellow there. That's where there was a concentration of students, perhaps in the same block, the same street. So we had asked Randy Baxley, his team, to put this together for us because we wanted to get a sense as well. We can look at Excel spreadsheets and we can figure that out all day long, but we really wanted to get a good visual for you and for us to work from as well. And then the subsequent slides here show the actual, again, I guess, density or the distribution of SWAS students, again, projected to attend relative to the 3 current sites, SWAS sites. So this first one shows you GOM and where those students are coming from. This one here shows Collin Ranch. And the last one here is Hunsberger.
Wow.
So I'm going to start to wrap this up, and maybe Interim Superintendent McNeil may have some comments as well. I think we're very cognizant and aware that our 3 SWAS sites, and we need 3 school within a school SWAS sites, are kind of lined up right together, GOM, Collin, and Hunsberger. And we have met with parents and guardians and talked to community members, not just about the closure of the Whitehead program, but also the location of the 3 programs right now. Now, we also, there's a lot of history to the SWAS programs and why they were placed where they were placed, and we dug up as much history and talked to people who were retired as much as we could. And there were reasons for that. It might have been classroom space that was available at the time. It might have been a principal who was very open to having school within a school programming coming to their particular school. These programs, they're amazing programs, but they're programs that also, put load on a school and on a principal as well, even with the amazing support from the gifted and talented department. So there's a variety of reasons. They used to be located at other schools and eventually found their way to the 4 schools and now to the 3 schools. So I think maybe I'll stop there in case Dr. McNeil wants to make a couple of comments.
So just really quickly, thank you very much, Debbie and Sherry, for all of the time and effort. And I do want to also thank Rick and his entire team for transportation. This has been quite the process when we're moving a program and we're shutting a program down. There's a lot of emotion wrapped in that, both from the student side and from the parent side, and so we absolutely accept that and acknowledge that. But what this recommendation will allow us to do is actually have a more proactive model put into place for GT programming across the school district when we're talking about our SWAS programming. And that's really where we need to get to. This heat map, it is very cool, but it means something when we're talking about making sure that we have programs in place where our students are living at. We have a very robust, gifted, and talented program here within the Washoe County School District, and we ought to be gosh darn proud of it. But it does take an enormous amount of resources to run that program, and we provide transportation for the SWAS program. So this recommendation is very important for us to push forward and make sure that we have programs in place for our students.
Okay.
And just to quickly end it, so when we think about the recommendation that's coming forward today, the things that we are very mindful of when we think about equitable access to programming, how long is a student on a bus to a program? We're very aware the SWAS programs, our kids are coming out of their neighborhoods and choosing to attend, and in doing that are forming relationships with teachers and students and principals. We were very mindful of that when the decision was made to close the Jerry Whitehead Elementary program. We also, as Dr. McNeil mentioned and as Sherry has talked to, we work very closely with transportation. Our programming in Washoe, Gifted and Talented, is amazing. And when Sherry talks with her colleagues, not just across the state, but across the nation, and has a chance to even present, people are surprised, and that's probably a soft word there when they think, gosh, look at what Washoe County School District does to support their gifted students. And then finally, we're very mindful too that there's a lot of things going on around school capacity as we're building new schools and opening new schools and opening schools that might be opening with more students than what we thought they would. A lot of moving parts going on because we're building new schools and the improvements that we're making. So I heard a comment earlier today, a perfect storm. It is kind of a perfect storm, but we also think it's a good time to really take a look at what programming may need to look like the fall next 2021 school year. So, and our goal would be to come back with an update once we have those projections and we have an idea. So whether it's toward the end of this calendar year or early next January, with an update on where we're at with our work. So with that, I'm going to stop.
Okay. Other questions and comments? I appreciated the heat map. There are no easy solutions to this, and I think you did a great job of laying out, here's how we assess people, here's all the outreach efforts that we're making to make sure that we're reaching every student that could possibly qualify, and then here's where they live, and that's just the objective fact. But these are tough, and it is hard to explain to that parent of that child who is all the way out in Timbuktu from a program that that there isn't transportation provided for them or whatever the issue is. So I appreciate the frustration of some parents, and I also really appreciate the job that you all have done to try to balance all of the factors that impact all of the offerings that we make for our gifted and talented students. Trustees, do you have any questions or other comments? Yes, Vice President Raymond.
Well, thank you. I also think the heat map is very helpful personally, and I think the goal that I had in asking for this agenda item was to just explore what our options are in kind of distribution of the program. We heard a lot during the budget forums and the discussions around the GATE programs that we offer here about how unique this school within a school at the elementary level is nationally, and we heard from families that moved here because of this program. And I think the heat map might also reflect that if you're coming to this community because of a program like this, you're going to look for housing likely in the neighborhood of that program. And I think we see that in the heat map a bit, especially with the history of Collin Ranch being, I think, the original SWAS program at the elementary level. So although I, understand by looking at the heat map that there's a large concentration there, that it makes sense to have, a large program there, I also believe that this does not represent equity to me for our district to have GOM and especially GOM and Collin being so close together and each having programs. I just would really hope to see when you do come back something that shows, and it's not, certainly looks like a socioeconomic equity issue, but it's a transportation issue, it's a regional equity issue, and so I just really hope that we can, and I know you do, and so I'm encouraged that we're having this conversation and that we can look at something where not only are the kids on the bus less, but again, if we can find a way to route these programs geographically, then maybe this heat map changes in the future too, because people are moving to be near the program as well. So thank you for everything.
Other comments?
I would just,
yes, go ahead.
I would just say I agree absolutely with what Vice President Raymond said. And I'm glad we're taking this look because I think we want to send the message that we want every kid, no matter where they are in the district, to have access to the program, and that's important to us, whether it's transportation, whether it's program opportunities, and so on. So I am encouraged by this, and I would just encourage my colleagues to support the motion. Oh, there is no motion. I'd like to make a motion.
There isn't a motion yet.
I'd like to make a motion. Oh, there's public comment.
Yes, public comment. Go ahead, please, JJ.
Pamela Abercrombie.
Ms. Abercrombie, welcome.
Pamela Abercrombie, for the record, from the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, education manager. I just wanted to add a note that I think there are a couple factors that haven't been considered, and that is the geography that Trustee Taylor did mention. There's a lot of geography in the outliers that could be condensed into one school on the north end of the district. The equitability, we've got families that have been significantly impacted by the SWAS closure. The health impacts of a child on a bus, the health impacts of a 7-year-old getting up at 6:30 in the morning, or actually 5:30 to be ready to go to the bus, and on the bus, then a long day. I think that there's a few factors that still need to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that input.
Terry Larson.
Ms. Larson, welcome.
Hi, my name is Terry Larson. I am the chairwoman of the Parent Advisory Committee for Indian Education. I'm a member of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and my son attends the SWAS, or he did attend the SWAS at Jerry Whitehead, and he was transferred to GOM. So now we drive 22 miles one way to get him to school. My other option was for him to get picked up at Jesse Hall at 7:30 and ride a bus for 2 hours to get to school. by 9:30. And other parents that do ride the bus, I chose not to have my son ride a bus for 4 hours a day due to health reasons. So, but other parents who don't have the same ability to drive their kid to and from school, their child is getting to school at 9:26, 9:27. They were late twice last week. So that's kind of difficult for your first few weeks of school, being late that often. And I don't think that's acceptable at all. And I thought it was really interesting how Vice President Raymond mentioned that people are moving to the Washoe County School District specifically for the SWAS program. That must be a nice privilege to have. Like, people that are in low income situations don't have the privilege to move from home to home just because a school within a school is near their child. That's a nice privilege to have, and I wish maybe one day I can have that privilege. Another point I wanted to talk about is the kids from Cold Springs, they get on a bus at 6:50 in the morning. So that's third graders, fourth, fifth graders get on a bus at 6:50. They don't get home till like 5:20, 5:30. That's ridiculous. Another point I want to make is, so my son is in 5th grade. GOM is keeping their 6th grade. So how is GOM preparing my son for middle school? So hopefully he'll go to Sky Ranch or he'll go to Shaw Middle School. We haven't decided yet. But how are they preparing my son for middle school if they're keeping their 6th grade? Because as far as I know, SWOP's 7th and 8th still. And that's where the kids from GOM are going. And I asked Sherry that question a few months ago of how they're going to prepare my son for middle school, and she said she didn't know. They didn't have a plan yet. They were just planning to get through the school year. And so I have yet to get any answers of how my son's going to be prepared for middle school. So my daughter went to Jesse Hall. They did a lot of work doing field trips to the middle school, getting them used to it, et cetera, et cetera. My son's not going to have that same opportunity. So there's another reason why our 5th graders are just getting left behind. And then another point that I wanted to, the heat map, thank you for bringing that up. And it's all in the white affluent neighborhoods. All the neighborhoods of people of color are not included in that heat map. And so there's a big, huge, it's helpful to look at to see where the students are located, but it's not helpful just to show, it shows you an inequity of the representation of people of color in the SWAS program.
Thank you, Ms. Larson.
Alexandra Frankel.
Welcome, Ms. Frankel.
Thank you. My name is Alexandra Frankel. My son, August Hernandez, is a first-year student in 3rd grade at Roy Gum. We live about as far out in Sparks as possible. I think it's very frustrating that my 8-year-old has to spend well over an hour in the morning to get to school. I drive him in the afternoon, which is a huge inconvenience to me because I don't want him to be on a bus for 3 hours a day. He's a little boy. Also, the bus has only picked him up on time once, and it often arrives at school late, which gives him no opportunity to prepare himself for the day. He comes into class in a rush and doesn't have time to adequately situate himself like his classmates do. I think that's also extremely frustrating. In addition, I have a 2nd grader and was not able to obtain a variance, so I now have 2 children in very different locations during the day, which is also a hardship on my family. I heard the question asked by the board during the Tesla presentation, what are you doing to support the parents so that they can support their children? And I feel like in this situation, nothing is being done to support the parents so that they can support their children. I know it was said that this program is optional, that we don't have to send our children to this program, but this is something that my son needs. He is a special needs student, as are all the students in this demographic. He has been at 3 different schools where he has been very uncomfortable and unhappy. In the past 3 weeks, I've seen a huge change in him, and I don't want to have to take that away, but it is extremely inconvenient for my family that all of the schools that he has the option of attending are so very far away. I think that it would make way more sense to either choose centralized locations or make a triangle so that everyone in the district has equal access to this program. The heat map was nice to see, but I agree with what you said, Vice President, regarding families moving specifically to their locations. I don't have that option. I cannot pick up my family and move. Additionally, we don't know in the future where students are going to test into the 99.9th percentile. So based on that information, are we expecting this program to move every year? And if so, how is that fair to our students who need stability? Thank you.
Great input. Thank you, Ms. Frankel.
Keith Killian.
Mr. Killian, welcome.
Hello, Ms. Holland, our president. We've talked on email before. Thank you for responding. I wanted to address that. You taking the time out of your day to respond to my wife several times with frustrating emails that I'm sure that she sends you. It is appreciated. Nonetheless, we did get information. There was information that I observed today that was quantifiable. That heat map was interesting to see. I also agree with the Vice President that with all statistics, you have to look a lot deeper than just a simple heat map. Those particular areas I'm very familiar with because I patrol those areas when I'm at work. They're a high-density living area. Very expensive homes, but the property lot size is significantly different than many of the other areas that I saw on the heat map, such as the Spanish Springs area, down in southeast Reno, and a few other spots like Cold Springs. Everybody in here is an educated person, and you're all elected to this board by your peers. Thank you for being here and being involved. It's impressive to see that there's a student that's involved with this. But nonetheless, these are basically special education students. They're on both ends of the spectrum. And I have a personal experience with that as I was coming through the educational system. I was deemed a special ed student. However, I was just like my son, highly intelligent, bored, would get into mischief. I experienced having to ride a bus for a long time. I was in just as many elementary schools as my son, 5 today. He's a 4th grader. And it's very disappointing. And one of the things you'll learn about a gifted and talented person or somebody of high intelligence is stability is the most important thing that they can have when they're young. And if you don't implement that at such a young age, as you all know, there is no way you're going to lead them to success. It was neat to see that Tesla was involved with something in this district, and it's awesome that's coming to our area. I really welcome that. But Elon Musk, he was a special student. Gifted, profound. Look what he's done with his life through perseverance. He also had instability in his life. And that has led to personal issues with him and his own family, lack of stability. But he's been a successful business entrepreneur. I want my son to have emotional stability, number one, which is being provided inside the program. And I echo that with the other parents that are here. I'm glad that you're even considering looking at a regional distribution. I think it's appropriate. The information that was provided earlier this year by the district was insufficient, and I see that you took that seriously and you have that information and you provided it today. I have additional questions, but I can address that at a later time, and I'm confident that you will give us that information now. I also am peculiar to the transportation system. I work in a division that inspects the school buses. So it's a personal interest of mine to make sure that they're safe, transportation is safe. I also have access to the accident data nationwide for school buses, and for every 10 minutes that a child is on a bus additional time, exponentially increases for injury. I think that's a factor that I'd like to see taken into account as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great input. Thank you, Mr. Killian.
Justin Zaninga.
Welcome, Mr. Zaninga.
Hey, it's good to be here. I'd like to thank everybody for their time to come and join this meeting. I do want to say I am excited to see the pilot program going, the nuclear testing. And with that nonverbal testing, I'm kind of optimistic that we will see a wider range of SWAS potential students coming up. So instead of bottlenecking it in South Reno, maybe if we can be preemptive, and maybe as we were closing one site in Vista, which is pretty affluent, like I feel like if our heat map was on like those communities, that we would see more on that Vista side, because I think that's why it was successful at Whitehead, because that's where it captured a lot of that community. But maybe as we're closing down Whitehead, projecting where could be another school, maybe where they are keeping their 6th grade students, and other data points instead of, I don't know. Maybe I haven't been in on the conversation since the very beginning, but it looks like some data points were taken into account, like cost cost savings, not other things like the risk of keeping the students on the bus for much longer than necessary. So I look forward to those future, like you said, Vice President, future programs that'll surely come up in, next time GATE is in front of the board in order to make it a much equitable program for the community.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's all I have for this item.
Thank you, JJ. Is there anybody else that wants to address us on this item that hasn't put in a card? Okay. Let's bring it back to the board. Vice President Raymond.
I'd like to make a motion, and so what I'd like to move that the Board of Trustees guide or ask of the staff to provide direction to the staff to design and implement a regional model approach for possible SWAS relocation of programming in consideration of equitable access, cost efficiencies, and facility capacity to begin in the school year 2021 if possible, but looking for that regional model to be a long-term regional model that would be stable for a long period of time, which I know we can't always predict. But
So second by, let's give that one to Trustee Minetto today. Yes. And I think when, just in discussion, I believe that equitable access to programming takes into account the geographic issues for families to be able to get to these programs, as well as making sure that the equitable access cuts across all of our diverse populations, not only geographically but also socioeconomically, that we, and I know you're making those efforts, but making sure that we can equalize if we can and make equitable that access. Okay, is there any other discussion? We have a motion by Vice President Raymond, a second by Trustee Minetto. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for all the background research. Thank you for the great conversation about this item, and we hope to provide more stability for our families in the future. Thanks so much. Let's take a recess. We've been here for almost 2 hours, so let's take 15 minutes. Yes, 3 hours, yeah. Been sitting here. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Thank you. No. Okay, we will be back in session. Thank you for your patience. And yes, the crowd goes wild. Okay. Item 4.04 is approval of the grant application to the Nevada Department of Education for school safety funding for social workers in the schools enhancement, school resource police officers, and social, emotional, and academic development grants for $4,250,415.75 in fiscal year 2020 and $4,101,585.69 in fiscal year 2020 in schools throughout the Washoe County School District. Mr. Hayes, welcome. And hi, Lauren. Welcome to you, too.
Good evening, President Holland, trustees, Interim Superintendent McNeil, and the amazing Mr. Nathan. For the record, Ben Hayes, Chief Accountability Officer, with Lauren Olin, our Director of Grants. And we are here to talk about the Nevada Department of Education school safety funding. And the reason this wasn't on consent is because it's such a high dollar amount, and we wanted the chance to get in front of you and kind of present what we think is a holistic approach that not only is preventative for safety, but also kind of has the benefit of improving conditions for learning for our students. And as one of the precursors for safety and climate is empathy, we're committed to making this less than 5 minutes of a presentation.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Lauren Olin, Director of Grants. So let's see, I guess I've got to click. You can click. So this grant is actually 4 points. There's a social worker part of the grant, and in FY20 there's $4.7 million available statewide, and in FY21 there's $8.2 million statewide. Wow. For school resource and police officers for FY20 there's $4.2 million, and there's $5.7 million in FY21. For facilities improvements, Washoe County and Clark County actually cannot apply for this part of the grant this year. So for FY20, there's $8.3 million, and we'll be looking at that to see if we want to apply for that at that time. And then finally, there's the social emotional and academic development grant, and in FY20 there's $2.2 million, and FY21 the same, $2.2 million. So first we'll go to social workers, and we have applied for $2.526 million in each year, FY20 and 21. And if we're fully approved, this would increase the number of schools that have a social worker from 30% of our schools to 80%.
Lauren, are these are competitive grants, I'm assuming?
Yes,
So,
highly competitive.
yeah, so we don't know, and that's a big chunk of the available funding, so.
Right. I did get a message from Indy today, and they said because they had so many applicants, which I don't like to hear, that they're not going to announce funding until next week. They were supposed to announce yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So, so these are the schools that, and you can tell there's a tremendous need in our school district. All these schools, we put it out to all the schools, and these are all the schools that applied. And then we had to rank in order of importance based on data and need. And so the schools that you see in red are our highest need schools for a social worker. And then the schools that are in purple, which I know that was probably a bad color to pick. It's hard to tell from the white, but that's Encompass, Duncan, Loader, Bennett, Hall, Lincoln Park, Matthews, Palmer, Smithridge, and Veterans all have a 0.5 FTE right now under the present social worker grant we have. So those schools are asking for another 0.5 so that they have a full-time person at those schools. And we have found in administering this grant that a full-time person on staff rather than being split between a school is much more effective. So that was our reasoning for that ranking. Second grant that we're applying for is the, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Lauren, so all the schools in black don't have any?
That's correct.
Okay. I thought so. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, so for our school resource and police officers, for FY20 we applied for $1.1 million, and for FY21 we'll apply for $1 million. It's a little bit less than the second year because there's some things that we wouldn't need in the second year, such as uniforms and things of that nature. So we're applying for 9 police officers targeted at 9 middle schools. And then we're also asking for a threat assessment police officer. And this would be a new position in our police force that would ensure a proactive approach to school violence by working with our counseling and psychology departments to do threat assessments. And these are the 9 schools that we have targeted to have a full-time police officer on campus. And as it is right now, there's only 1 police officer at a high school, and then the middle school police officers also have to patrol some of the elementary schools. So this would be taking less work. We'd be taking some of the work off these police officers that have to cover so many schools.
Madam President? Okay.
Yes, Trustee Cotto.
I was a little surprised to not see Cold Springs on the list. I know that right now there's an officer that is dedicated just going back and forth between O'Brien and Cold Springs. So would that officer be more dedicated to Cold Springs that we currently have? I was just surprised not to see Cold Springs listed.
Right. So if we do get funding and O'Brien gets a police officer, then that would free up the time for the officer that has been assigned to O'Brien and Cold Springs. So they'd be more Cold Springs, and then they'd be working with the other elementary schools in that area. Okay, and finally we have the social emotional academic grant, and in FY20 we applied for $589,000, and in FY21 one we've applied for $522,000. So what this would do if we're funded for this grant would provide 2 additional SEL coaches and 2 restorative practice coaches. Those are new for our district. We do not have restorative practice coaches right now. We would also be asking for evidence-based curriculum for social emotional learning, which is called Second Step, and this would be targeted for our middle schools, which include Billinghurst, Clayton, Dilworth, Incline, Sparks, Swope, and Trainer. And then finally, this part of the grant would also pay for professional development for our SEL and restorative practice coaches, and also provide restorative practice training to our schools. So, is there any questions?
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess maybe go to the school resource police officer slide. So we are up one. Yeah. So on this one, so we applied for 1.134 million for 2019-2020. Would NSHE give, let's say the school district 1, will we get the full amount, or as you said, it's possible that we could receive 900,000 or 600,000 or something like that?
Yes, it's a competitive grant process, so all grants are based on how well you do. You get a score, and then based on the score, theoretically, whoever has the highest score should be getting the most amount of money. It depends. It made me wonder when they said they had 22 applicants. That means there are some charter schools in the state that are also applying for that, so I really don't know what that means. So we'll have to, if we don't get fully funded, then we'll have to revise our scope of work and probably fund down the slate, meaning if you go to this next slide where it says Clayton, O'Brien, Swope, we'll take the ones that have the highest data that indicates that they need a police officer at their school.
Yeah, and I bring that up because I really like the idea of having a threat assessment police officer, especially with what's just been happening for several years now with school shootings and stuff. And my thought was that if we didn't get funded for the full amount, if we were funded for less amount, we should have a conversation to see, does that just mean that we still pick police officers for the middle schools and we don't have a threat assessment police officer, or we have that and we have less middle schools? Like, I'm just wondering how that conversation would play out if we got less than what we applied for.
Right. So I can't exactly answer that question right now because we have to wait and see how we're funded. And if they decide just to fund all police officers, we could go back to NDE and say, can we trade a police officer for a threat assessment officer, and see what they say. It is more expensive to have the threat assessment officer because they need a patrol car, so we did put that into the grant. So that's about $48,000 for the car versus the bicycle that the middle school police officers would be issued. So, until we find out what the final award is, we can't really say, but it's definitely something we can consider once we find out how the funding goes.
Okay, Mr. Cotto?
So since we're the second largest school district in the state, I don't know how this process works, but to me, I'd be pretty surprised if we didn't really get close to what we're asking for, considering these types of issues are becoming more prevalent in not just our area, but many areas across the country. Would that surprise you, or do you really think that there could be an issue getting what we essentially need to keep our students and staff safe?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors that go into deciding how grants are going to be funded. And so it's entirely up to NDE to decide, if they have 22 applicants, they may really want to spread the wealth, or they may just throw some out because they didn't meet all the criteria. So it's hard to say. I agree with you. I'd love you to be on the review committees because I do think that we have a high need, but we just have to wait and see. We always put together the most competitive applications that we can. We try to tick every box at the very highest level of being written to. So I do hope that will play in our favor. Yeah.
Other questions? Yep, we know that competitive means competitive, and we also appreciate, Lauren, all the work that you and your team do to make sure that we get as much as we possibly can, because
thank you.
certainly bring a lot of resources back to the district from the state and the federal government. This is going to be a tough one, I'm sure, but we're gonna hold hope, hold
Me
out
too.
hope. Any other questions before we call for public comment? Are we done? Yeah, we're done. Okay. Or do you want to go on to you want to finish up that?
Oh, yeah, we have one. Next one.
There.
Yeah. So finally, we are seeking approval for this grant. It's similar to the way it's written on a consent agenda. So we're just officially asking if we can apply. Should I read it into the? Okay.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay. Okay, is there any public comment, JJ? Okay, and any more questions? Mr. Kelly? Oh, did you have a question, Mr. Cottle? No, okay, Mr. Kelly wanted to.
Yes, Madam President, happy to make a motion. I move that the Board of Trustees approves the grant application to the Nevada Department of Education for school safety funding for social workers and the schools enhancement, school resource police officers, and social, emotional, and academic development grants for $4.25,415.75 for fiscal year 2020 and $4,100,585.69 for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Any further discussion? Mr. Cottle?
Can I make a friendly? I think for the second one be $4,101,585.69.
Did I say it wrong?
I think you said $4,100,585.69.
Yeah, then I accept that.
Yes, yep. All right, thank you. With that correction, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing positive results from that application. They do. Okay, item 4.05. And I think you're probably, yes, excused. Thank you. Okay. Item 4.05 is discussion and possible action to approve as written or provide edits to the proposal requirements for vendors who wish to submit a proposal for consideration to facilitate one or more components of the search process for a superintendent of schools of the Washoe County School District. And Ms. Ellison, thank you for being here, and thanks for your work preparing that for us.
Good
Floor is
evening.
yours.
For the record, Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer. Thank you for having me here this evening. And I'm going on before 8 o'clock, so we're making great time.
That's right.
But this is an important conversation, and this is an extension of the conversation that we had at the last two meetings regarding the various milestones and activities that happen as a part of a superintendent search process. And so you all had a great conversation last time about what you had envisioned, kind of big picture about the process, and then you made some important decisions that lead us to where we are today. And just to kind of recap, one of the decisions that was made last time was to utilize an approach to collecting proposals from vendors who might be interested in helping us to support the search activities that does not involve a formal RFP process. And I think it's important for transparency, not only that you selected that process, but that we explain why. As a part of a formal RFP process, a designated committee would work with the purchasing office to create a scope of work, to create a scoring criteria, to review proposals, and then to bring to the Board of Trustees a recommendation regarding who a contract should be awarded to. A lot of that happens outside of the purview of the board, whereas under NRS 332.115, the district is permitted to procure professional services without engaging in that process. And so instead, what we would be looking to do is have staff send out some information to potential vendors, letting them know what our need is and what we're hoping to see in proposals. And then proposals received would come to this body for review and determination regarding contract award. So the motion that was made, well, there were a couple of motions made last time, but the motion that is pertinent to today's item is to utilize that approach where staff will reach out to potential vendors and collect proposals. And the purpose of this item is to look at a draft that I've prepared that would go out to potential vendors, get your feedback on that, and determine what that will look like so that we can get that process started and then bring proposals back to a future meeting. So with that said, I provided as an attachment a draft copy of all the best ideas I could find in doing a lot of research. And thank you to JJ who helped with a lot of the research. So just to kind of highlight what's included in this document, and please feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way. But we wanted to, of course, provide a description that included the option that proposers were welcome to partner with other vendors. That was one of the decision points that came out of the last meeting, was there might be a one-stop shop solution. There might be vendors who want to partner with other vendors to leverage their capabilities as it relates to various components of the process, and we wanted to make sure that folks were aware they could do that. We also wanted to talk about the type of award that could be made. So again, we might choose one vendor to help facilitate the entire process, or depending on the proposals that we receive, one or more vendors to break it up into different pieces. We provided information on the timeline, obviously, because we want to make sure vendors are prepared to deliver their proposal not only on time, but facilitate the search process in such a way that we have identified, hopefully, a superintendent prior to the start of next school year. I did want to emphasize, again, based on the feedback that I got from you all in prior conversations, that stakeholder input is a top priority for this board. And I also felt like it was really important to have proposers address the ways in which they'll ensure that the process is inclusive, so wide-reaching, and also accessible, right? So I think that takes into consideration the fact that not everyone can come to an in-person meeting. Not everyone can access an online survey. There are a lot of different barriers that people might face, and so I think the goal in this draft is to have proposers submit a proposal that contains a lot of options to engage stakeholders as a priority in this process. Items 1 through 10 outline some things we would want to make sure that they address in their proposal, and those were a lot of the major milestones that we talked about during prior meetings. So, who are they and are they qualified, right? Obviously, we want to know that. What their recommendations would be related to stakeholder input to create that superintendent profile.
Emily, can I just back up on
Absolutely.
number 1? One of the things that I have found is important in these kinds of proposals is for them to identify the specific personnel who will be assigned to this project.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And the qualifications and experience of that specific personnel. Because sometimes the firm will say, we've done all these amazing things, but you get stuck with the new kid.
Right. We have
so-
this great new search consultant.
Yeah. Up and comer. But that would, I just would like to add something about that on the first point.
This definitely would be a make or break your career kind of assignment if you were new to recruiting. So I think that's a great point.
Okay, I'm sorry, keep going.
Oh, that's fine. Number 2, again, was a focus on how they would gather stakeholder input. Number 3, what kind of recommendations do they have regarding a process to determine compensation, to determine appropriate compensation? That's obviously going to be important to the recruiting process. It's one of the most important things to candidates. information on the ways in which screening criteria is developed. We talked a little bit about candidate scoring systems and how those might be utilized and how we can avoid having too rigid a scoring system, but also maybe still be able to leverage a scoring system to whittle the pool from here to here. A detailed recruiting strategy. I think it's important to know that they're not just going to post an ad on Career Builder and hope for the best, right? How are they going to proactively recruit candidates who might not otherwise be thinking about or even aware of our opportunity? Item 6 is information on their standard screening process. So how do they make sure that the candidate meets minimum screening criteria? We'd like to know, I think, how they're going to support semifinalist and finalist interviews. So what does their involvement look like as that process unfolds? I think there are different things that different companies offer that they would consider value-add services. So again, whether it's contract negotiations or interview questions or scoring mechanisms or, guarantees or things like that. We'd want to, of course, hear about those. A detailed cost breakdown, I think that will be really important as well in determining, there's sort of the package price, and then is there an a la carte option available from particular vendors? A timeline for the proposed activities. I think that we've had a lot of conversation about what the process might look like, but I think we are going to need the proposers to tell us kind of what's feasible from their expert perspective in conjunction with kind of meeting timelines that we have and when we want to have somebody in place. So does it line up with what we've started to think about? And then I think it's also important to know what their expectations are of us to support a successful search. So did I forget anything? On page 2, I direct them to communicate with me, so you guys don't have to field emails. And then, right, just forward those to me. Then I put in a timeline here, keeping in mind some of the conversations that we had last time about, Katie, I know you were not available for the 24th meeting, so on that chart I put together, I pushed some things out. But again, what's doable for their organization? I think we have to set expectations. And then we have a little disclaimer there, or a little notification regarding public record, right? And making sure that they know their proposals are part of the public record. But I think it's also important to talk about candidate confidentiality. And I really kind of wrestled with what to include in this document, because I think that the question we're trying to answer, right, is how do you maintain compliance with obviously public records and open meeting law while also not discouraging candidates who might not want their boss to know that they're thinking about other opportunities. And so my recommendation is that just like any other position that we would recruit for, and I think we have some policies or some regs that speak to what is information that we would disclose about applicants and our employees. We would not typically disclose who the applicants are when we're in the applicant phase, right? So as candidates come into the applicant tracking system, if we got a request for a list of names of people who had applied for a particular position, that is not generally information that we would provide. So I think when we're still talking about the applicant phase, we're okay. But then we need to define what the rest of the process looks like, because I think that will then determine how information is communicated to candidates. And I think we would need to engage potential vendors in conversation around how they would position that information, right? Because I think where it occurs in the process changes what you say to a candidate. So, for example, if the message is we go from applicant stage to minimum screening to finalist interviews with you all, right? It's at that point that the candidates become part of the public record, because that has to happen in open meeting. If we decide on a model where there's a search committee interview that happens to take us from applicants to, screening to finalists, then it's at this point with the search committee that it would probably become part of the public record. And I think we would need to engage presenters in a conversation around, based on the process that will be utilized, how will you communicate to candidates when they become part of the public record in such a way that it doesn't discourage candidates from wanting to apply, if that makes sense. I feel like that was a confusing explanation.
No, that was good. It's a very important discussion, because we don't want to suppress application from folks who don't necessarily want to have their employer know and jeopardize their current employment if they're not going to become a finalist. And that's absolutely a real issue, and we could lose very qualified applicants if we are not careful with how that process is managed.
Yeah.
And in particular, if it's a sitting superintendent somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly. That's a
Or
significant
even a
consideration.
deputy or an
Yeah.
assistant,
Yeah.
People lose their jobs over the fact that they're applying for another one.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of an overview. Is there anything that you have questions about, or that you think needs clarification, or that we didn't touch on that we should, or
anything else? Yes, Vice President Raymond.
I had just a couple questions. And I'm not sure that this is where it goes. Maybe it's the next phase, but more specific, I guess, request to be available for attendance at our board meetings whenever possible or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking that would possibly, I'm not thinking it would discourage, I guess, but just to, I guess, emphasize the importance of the firm being available in person in Reno.
Okay.
I'm going to push back on that one, just personally. I think,
Not
as
that
a
they have to
courtesy-
be from here, sorry.
But as a courtesy, we would always, even if it was somebody local, it would have to be, mutually agreeable schedules of appearances, because they're working, with other clients. Nathan, I'm sorry, you're finished?
No, I'm not.
Can I
I
add
just
one
want
thought
to
to that?
explain, I guess, why. I would worry that we would get through this process and get with a search firm that is not from here, say, and then isn't available, or because of budget constraints isn't able to come to meetings and be present.
So let me think about that for a second. So one of the things that I did include was, let me see what number it is. Description of the services provided to support semifinalist and finalist interviews. We could potentially expand on that, or we could just ask the question, what availability do you have to be in person at board meetings in the event that it's needed?
Down the line, I guess, yeah.
Right? Because I don't think we can give them an idea of how much we're thinking, but maybe we could get from them, oh no, we only do our thing remotely. Or they might say, we included in our price is having a consultant physically in Northern Nevada X number of times throughout this process. So maybe something like that.
I understand why it doesn't make sense at this point. It's something I'm concerned about and would, I guess, address in the process of reviewing the proposals, I suppose. But I've only really been through one major search like this, and the consultant was from Seattle and made time to come here on his terms for 2 days, and everyone else had to work around it, which I get, but for public open meeting situations, that just wouldn't work as well. This was a private nonprofit, and so we all moved our schedules around, but I would just be concerned that there might not be an understanding of our desire to have someone physically here for certain meetings, and they're making it a priority on their end to be here. But that can be addressed at the other stage, I suppose.
I think we can add a question, though, that says, almost like what's included, right? Does your package price or your proposal include just support during interviews, or are there times that you're going to come in person? Because I think there are a couple of other activities that may require in-person support, right? If we're going to have town halls, for example, or things like that. And so I think let's maybe on the front end have them articulate to us sort of what's included.
Okay.
And then you can absolutely, during the presentation phase, ask some more questions, either based on what they submit, or maybe we're a little further along at that point and we have a better idea of what we might expect. I don't know, does that?
We might be able, oh, go ahead, Doug.
No.
I was just going to say, we might be able to say something along the lines that the Board of Trustees meets, the second and fourth Tuesdays of, each month, and there will be times when when the consultant's presence will be required, just something along, just to give them a heads up that those are the dates. There might be others, but that those are not movable. Maybe something like that.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. In my university life, I was involved in several presidential searches, and which all had search firms and involved, and they made a part of what we paid them for. Actually, what were their expenses, their travel expenses. And so there was an expectation, for an example, when we actually write the job announcement, that person may be here, they give us some samples and work through that. In each of those cases they did. I mean, that's a pretty high level search, as is this one. And so hopefully the best firm, I do think it's important to have the conversation, certainly, but I would think in making our best decision, it's going to be a firm that prioritizes this search. There aren't that many searches like this that are not in our area, not in our region in particular, not even in our state, frankly, at this level, and would understand the importance of this and such. And so that conversation should be easily had, and they should be able to easily make us feel comfortable that basically when necessary, they're going to be here. They know they're going to be expected to be here because, it's that important. So I've had better success, I guess, than you have in that several times. So hopefully we'll land closer to my experience than yours.
And Nathan, you have another question?
I just have one more quick one.
Yeah, okay, and then Nathan.
I think it's, I don't know. I think it probably doesn't matter either, but I think the timeline feels really tight at the front end because of Labor Day weekend and by the time this actually gets out there, that's next Tuesday.
That's true.
And I just don't know how much time people will have to gather their questions. I think that the bottom two dates are important, but maybe there's a way to look at I guess primarily the questions. I don't know, again, never having been on the other end of things, that's about 2 weeks to finish the full proposal, or a little more, but with Labor Day. So I don't know if that's like a normal amount of time to do a full proposal, or if that feels tight. Like in the grant world, Lauren's world, 2 weeks to do a full grant proposal would be like murderous. So
it felt tight to me, if I may.
Yes.
It felt a little tight to me too, and I think but I also know that it's part of a larger timeline, right, for us to get to where we want to go.
Yeah.
But because President Simon Holland isn't going to be available at that second meeting in September, maybe those last two dates can be a little closer together when we choose them as finalists. Maybe a 2-week period between those two, might give us 10 more days in there to push it out a little bit with the holiday and so on. And if someone's notified on X day and then they're in 2 weeks, if they're notified by October 1st, let's say, and the meeting is October 15th, that's a 2-week window, and I do think that that's reasonable. And that gives another, week or so to maybe push out. Instead of September 3rd, maybe we're going out, later, because the holiday really does.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
That's a tough expectation for them to have read it, have done whatever research they need to, and submit questions by Tuesday after a 3-day weekend, which often turns into a 4-day weekend. And
so when we get a little bit further along in the timeline, I have to defer to JJ for help with board item deadlines. So for I said October 15th. Do we have a meeting on the 15th?
Oh, I
Hang
just
on.
assumed we did.
Yes, we do. At least I have one on my calendar. Do you have one?
Yes, I do too. You won't be here by yourself.
Okay, that's a good thing.
It's actually October the 2nd. We have meetings on the 8th and the 22nd in October.
Yeah.
So my calendar is
the
wonky.
first is the first Tuesday.
Yeah, the 1st is the first Tuesday, that's why.
So push it out to the 22nd.
Yes,
of
so we have
October.
meetings on the 8th and the 22nd in October.
We have
Okay.
meetings scheduled for the 15th and the 29th.
Why is that?
Because the second week of October is
Fall
October
Fall
break.
break. That's
It's
right.
fall break,
That's
that's
right.
why. Okay, so it's the 15th and the 29th? Is that what you said, JJ?
Correct.
So then the 2nd is my due date for the 15th.
For this, we would make it work. And as long as we had it no later than the morning of the 8th, I'm sure the Chief General Counsel would be able to work with me on getting the item approved in board docs.
You know anybody that can help us?
I
Chief
think we can
Counsel?
make that happen, not a problem. I promise.
Okay. So
Why don't we just
I can
let
make some
Emily
tweaks from there.
have that direction and then maybe work on the dates because I think the direction's been given. Nathan, you had a comment.
Most of what I have to say has already been expressed by Dr. Taylor and President Simon Holland, although just based on my, albeit limited experience, I would say if we are to involve a third party, demanding that they have a base in Reno would seem to limit the options for that. And so I do think it would be a better approach. Granted, I don't have a lot of experience with this.
No, we
To,
appreciate your input.
Yeah, to set specific dates that are non-negotiable, and then perhaps allow for flexibility on the others.
Good input. One other thing I noticed, Emily, on the detailed recruiting strategy on number 5.
Okay.
I would really like to make some reference to our inclusiveness and that we want to make sure that the recruiting strategy reaches, a wide range of diverse candidates. I did have an opportunity to speak with the superintendent of schools for the state of Louisiana last week, who I was connected with by the Milken Foundation, and he was talking about the superintendent searches that they do, and he said, a lot of times what happens is that the firms have a type of superintendent and they just recycle the same type of candidates to everybody. And, okay, so I have these 5 people and they didn't get hired by the last 5, that we had searches for, so I'm going to push them on you.
Got it.
And so we want to make sure that we're putting that in here, that we want their recruiting strategy to address diverse and inclusive populations of, perhaps non-traditional candidates. Perfect.
If I may, Madam President, thank you. I was thinking of going a bit further, and not only do we want their recruiting strategy to include that, but we would actually like the candidate pool to be reflective of that. Just because they go out and recruit, say, oh, what we asked, nobody came. We want, don't just tell us how you might, we're going to put an ad in blackadministrators.com or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And get, that's our strategy. No, we expect that their strategy will produce a fully inclusive pool in all the areas that would be
Much better.
Important.
Thank you for building on that. Okay. Any other input? This is really, really exciting, and this is great work, and it's a great start, and I know this isn't something you've done before either, recruit
It's an adventure.
superintendent. So, and JJ, thank you for your help too on the research on this. This is great. Okay, so we've given some input.
Do you want me to recap the
Sure,
action
yes,
items you gave me, and
if
then
you
someone
would.
could turn that into a motion? Okay, awesome. So,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, call the public comment, and then we'll,
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you very much, Madam President and trustees. As you know, we do not support the non-RFP process that you were using. And some of it is for the reasons that the Vice President just said, because some of these firms actually recycle the same thing. So we have a couple suggestions for your proposal here. And the first one would be no Broad School graduate superintendents apply, please. That's Heath Morrison. That's Pedro Martinez. Those guys were associated with a school of thought about superintendents that's known as the Broad School of Superintendents. I suggest you do your research. We don't want anyone like that. So just put that in the proposal. Second thing to be putting in the proposal is we want to know about any previous relationships with anybody in the district, trustees, staff, no campaign contributors, nobody that's done consulting work, nobody that's helped find superintendents in the past. We want a fresh face that doesn't have connections to the school district. I also believe we should know, are there any relationships that you've had with people within the school district at other agencies or other organizations? Complete transparency. You've decided to go with the non-RFP process. Okay. Then if you just include what I'm talking about in your proposal, you will help Mr. Rombardo avoid all the public information requests we'll submit for every single firm that applies to the district, the ones we know and the ones we don't know. So I think taking these things into consideration with the proposal that you're talking about will go at least partially to restoring transparency to what has become somewhat of a non-transparent process. And if we understand ahead of time what the relationships are between consultants, staff, trustees, and other superintendents, I believe we'll have much better luck and much more success in selecting the next superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I would certainly argue against excluding anybody from any source before we've had a chance to hear about them. That's a personal feeling, and I know, having done research, that there are some outstanding superintendents in this country that did also happen to take the Broad course, so I wouldn't want to exclude anybody just because they had taken that. I also agree that there have been strong feelings about candidates who came through that, but I don't think it's fair to exclude anyone just because they took professional development at a certain place. Welcome other comments from trustees.
Thank you, Madam President. I think whether we do it in our request for people to send in, their proposal, right, to be involved, whether it's formally written or in our conversations, certainly we would want to know whatever connection they may have to Washoe County School District. And it may not be, in my opinion, I don't want to just take someone and say, hey, if you have any connection, you're out. I mean, that could make someone a better candidate. I mean, someone that knows us. I mean, we just don't know. So I wouldn't do it for the same reasons as shared, but I do think that's information we would want to know, and certainly information the public should know. So I'm comfortable in that coming out one way or the other, but I certainly concur with that statement.
Yep, I think that's good as well. Okay, Mr. Kelly.
And just to build on that, I mean, I would think a local firm from Washoe County would obviously have many connections with the school district, but just knowing up front, these are the connections I've had, and I've done business with the school district in this other way would be good. And I don't know if that's something that we would want to put in this proposal, or if we'd want that information put out during the next step. But I agree. I think that's something good to know.
It'd be tricky to how we would say it, because I'm thinking of a number 12 here that would say, please describe any previous experience or connections with Washoe County or Washoe County School District, Washoe County personnel. And people might read that as, well, I better find some to, okay, so-and-so's uncle, was a bus driver, They might read it that they will get extra points if they have it.
What if we say professional?
And just use the word disclose or something like that. Anyway, I don't want to wordsmith for you because I'm sure you can come up with that. Trustee Minetto. Oops. So.
Well, and we don't have to specifically say Washoe County. What experience have you had with other school districts?
Well, I think
they asked that earlier.
We do have that in number 1, but I think Mr. Bailey's comment is about specifically he wants to make sure that there's no insider trading going on. Inside baseball or whatever. Yeah.
Right. I think your point is well taken that I'll work on wording it in such a way that it doesn't imply that there's a desire to have
some
people
advantage.
who have a relationship with the district.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other input? Okay. Well, then let's have you summarize what you've heard, Emily.
Okay. So to this document, we would like to add an element that they disclose the specific personnel who will be assigned to support the account and provide us some information on that person. We would like to have them provide information on how they will ensure a diverse candidate pool. We would like them to provide some information on how much time they will be available to provide in-person support. I'm going to create a little bit more time in the schedule so that they have a little bit more time to submit questions, and we work with all the posting timelines and everything. And then we are going to have them please disclose any relationships with the district or district personnel or past, and I'll wordsmith it a little bit, but have them disclose what their prior history with the district is.
Okay. Okay. Anything we missed? Anything else folks would like to add? Okay. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
So when would this document be released?
No, I don't know. That's an aggressive timeline. I have a busy schedule tomorrow, but I'm hoping in the next couple of days so that we have more time for turnaround.
And would that be sent to all of us? Not to approve, but just
informational.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't understand why not. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve as revised by direction of the board? Mr. Kelly.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Caudill. Any further discussion? JJ, are you okay with that? You got it all? Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Okay, and thank you for the work, Emily. I know you are very busy this time of year, so we are very appreciative.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead to board reports, and Interim Soup can make her way back in. There she is. Do board members care to make any reports? Mr. Caudill.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on the record and thank Interim Superintendent McNeil and Area Superintendent Van Tress for the professionalism and customer support supplied to North Valley's families that have had some challenges over the last 2 weeks. And some of the feedback that I've received is it's nice to have professionalism return to the district. It's nice to be valued, and they're not worth thinking about their experience anymore. They're focusing on the response and the follow-up, and that has been missing, and so I'm appreciative of that.
Well, that's nice. That's great. Okay, any other board reports? Anyone want to? Okay, we'll move on to Interim Superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, President Holland, and I know everybody wants to get out, but I have just a few things here on my list.
No, that's good. That's good. You have all our attention.
And we have an entire audience out there.
Hey, there's probably thousands live streaming as we speak.
Absolutely. So first of all, congratulations to all of our incline schools for a very successful opening this week. I went up there and actually was able to visit the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school, and everybody was super excited, so it was a great opening. And then today we had the fabulous opportunity to meet with Mr. Doug Reeves, Dr. Doug Reeves, who is a nationally known expert on school improvement. And it was great because
We've seen him at NSBA.
Yes,
Yeah.
at NSBA. And he came out to our district. He met with our Equitable Access Task Force, and he met with several of our principals. He gave me the gift of 100-Day Leaders, which was a very nice read that I will have. And just for transparency, he did this on his own dime. He did not charge the district one penny to come out here today. So that was really exciting. And then Monday, we released the update to the Pathway to Positive Progress within our school district. All of you received that. And then also attached to that, we just have a few meetings that the interim superintendent and the school board are going to be at. Nobody can see this, but it's a great document. Yes. And then casual conversations, we've posted those dates. I have 4 of those, and then 5 community meetings. Those are all posted. And that's it for tonight.
That's great. You have been very busy, and I'm sure I speak for other trustees in thanking you for the great communication with employees. This last one that you did was really impressive with some of the things that our district has gone through in the last couple of weeks. We appreciate the hard work by our staff at all levels, dealing with some pretty important challenges, in addition to having 64,400 and some kids get to school. So big appreciation to everybody for that, and thank you, Interim Superintendent, for the great work you're doing and your leadership team.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any future agenda item requests? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I have one. We have Count Day coming up, and as we all know, year after year, Count Day and the reallocation of teachers always causes grief. So I'd like to have a future agenda item so that after going through our Count Day this year, we can maybe a few weeks or a month or so later talk about Count Day and the reallocation process while it's still fresh in our minds. It's just maybe we'll have an idea or two to make it better for the next year.
That's great. And just tagging on to that, if council will not kick me under the table, I hope that we have a series of reminders going out to families this week to be here on September 3rd to make sure that their children are here for Count Day. Just whatever we can do to promote it, Connect Ed, messages at schools, news release, how important it is for their child to be here on Count Day. Sort of like, the census. This is our census, and a lot happens from it, so. Oh, as the guy who ran the jail used to say, bail one, get one free. All right, sorry, that was not. Public comment. Is there anyone for public comment? Banji, anything you want to add? Pete? Okay. All right, hearing no public comment, our next meeting will be September 10th at 4 o'clock here in this room, and we are adjourned.